All right, Dave, let's call the meeting over. It's 9:04 and we'll, right. Okay. Oh, okay. Call the meeting in order. Let's see, I think we're doing the regular thing. Yeah, we are. So let's stand up and pledge allegiance. Thank you. We call the candidate. Would you like to go? Does that make sense? You want to have the candidate come in and we just do pledge allegiance with her? Sure. Yeah. Steve, all right, but let's okay. Go ahead. We'll open the invocation. Okay, thank you, Lord, for the Saturday morning. Thank you for all the teammates and candidates who are here. Bless this time of conversation and discussion about who will be our next leader in Township, and bless our candidates, Allison and Matt. May they be articulate and relaxed, and may they enjoy this process. Give us wisdom as we decide starting with the Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry about that, Bill. We were just jabbering away here. Okay, we need to approve the agenda for the morning. Any changes to the process? All right, hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda. Great, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Public comment. I'll open the public comment. Jared, no, got it. Close the public comment. All right, thank you. All right, approval of the consent agenda. Yeah, there's some minutes. I'll just take a moment to let you breeze through it from our meeting last week Thursday, or excuse me, this week Thursday.
I don't think we can.
Yes, they should be on. It looks like this guy here.
Oh.
It says that it was present.
Okay, got it. It's the one right on the left.
There's a correction to the president. Brian Jones and Jim Gerard were not present at that meeting. As you see, it's pretty brief, but we had a good meeting. It was a good discussion at the Mottman Center.
On the vote, it wasn't 7-0, it's probably 5-0.
That would be correct, 5-0. Right. Thank you, Jim. And the adjournment was 5-0 instead of 7-0.
As well as the approved agenda.
Yep.
Consent agenda.
Yep. So 5 of us were there. Great. Good pickups. All right. With those edits, I hear approval for the consent agenda.
Move to approve with the corrections as noted.
Support.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay. All right.
Steve,
Yes.
could I once again ask everybody to kind of talk a little louder today? I have a plugged ear
Okay.
and I can't hear out of the side. So.
Duly noted. All right. Thanks, Jan. Thanks for that reminder. All right, thank you. Okay, so hey, today is a great day. Manners interviews with Allison Nugent and Matt Butts, and so I'll turn it over to Bill. Please, Bill. Okay, great. Well, thank you.
Welcome.
Hey.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, good morning. Good morning. Good to see you again. That's it. So in the process of this, we had 2 candidates. Both are spending time with our staff and then spending time with the board. And so we're going back and forth for the next 2 hours. Thank you, Manager Cousins, for guiding us with some questions to ask. The questions are not meant to be
exclusive to us. If there's questions or specific items you'd like to ask the candidates, this is not, we strongly encourage you to ask them early. Don't wait. So for instance, before we get into the questions or as we go into the questions, you say, hey, I want to do a follow-up question on what was discussed or was brought up. This is meant to be interactive. This is not to be prescriptive. This is not how the interview has to be run. This is your interview. I want you guys all to know and get to know the candidate. And so at the end of this hour, I hope Allison has presented herself well enough that you understand her and she understands us. Ideally, throughout the conversation, I hope Allison banters with us on things that of interest to her. It's always a little awkward. Hey, do you have any questions for us at the end? Because, the momentum of the conversation, if we talk about a particular topic on parks, I almost like to have her ask questions on parks during the parks questions. So I'd like to have a bit more interactive along the way. But again, these questions are not meant to be the only questions we can ask. And if you see something, you go like, I want to ask a follow-up, let's do it. I will not ask the questions all 1 through 15. I was thinking that we would start with number 1 over here and we kind of run down the table and we run back and we just kind of let it flow. So let's have some fun with this, but also I hope, Allison, it gives you opportunity to tell us about yourself. So any questions from my colleagues about the process?
Just a reminder for Allison to push the button when you're going to respond.
Yep, and it should be green on the top. So, can we hear you?
Do I have to hold it or is it now on?
Okay. There we go.
Okay,
Super.
thank you.
Okay, so any questions, burning questions to ask first? All right, Brian, you start with the first question or?
Go off script right away.
There you go. That'd be the typical Brian, but yeah.
What excites you about being here today and what excites you about the possibility of being our manager?
Absolutely. So,
You can move that microphone around so you don't, that's it. Yeah,
Okay.
There you go.
so I've been doing municipal management for about 5 years and longer because I served on a board before. And I'm excited to come to Park because you already have an established park and trail system. You already have a community that is mostly residential. And there's a lot of really exciting opportunities going on in Park that I'm excited to be a part of. Like you've got this park that you're working on expanding. You have the Mountain Center, you have the beach, the Coast Guard facility. I think there's a lot of exciting things happening and I would like to be a part of it.
Super.
I won't necessarily go in order.
Okay, that's fine.
Please describe your management style and your approach working with township staff and members of the township board.
Absolutely. Staffing is always, it's an interesting thing, but I find that when you're a manager, you have to trust your staff and you have to believe that they are the experts. As a manager, I'm here to bring information to the board and then bring it back and get the stuff done. But the real heart of an organization is your staff. So the way I lead is that I'm not above my staff, I'm part of the staff. You need help, I will help you. You want me to back away, I will back away. I don't want to micromanage my staff. If I've hired them, I trust them. I trust that they're going to be able to do the job that they're hired for. And so I like a collaborative relationship. I want my staff to come to me when they think that something is not being done correctly or if they don't agree with something. I am happy to have those conversations, talk to them. I want the place that I work to be like a family. We're all here together. We're all in it. I want people to come to work and they're happy to be here and then they're happy to go home. So,
Okay, thank you.
All right. Briefly describe your employment history and qualifications and how your experiences have prepared you to serve as the next Park Township manager.
absolutely. So I started my municipal career in Texas. I was right outside of Dallas. I became the vice president of a water board, which in Texas, they have districts, not townships. And our purpose was to supply water and utilities to our residents. I started on the board. My background is I have a bachelor's in public policy. For years after I graduated, I kind of was like, I don't know what I want to do. I was a proofreader. I taught English as a second language in Mexico for 3 years. And then I got on the board and I'm like, wow, this is what I want to do every day. I didn't really care about the politics. I wanted to get things done. So, I pushed to create a manager position in Texas because I saw a need there, like this, that we can't just have these decisions being made once a month. Somebody needs to be there every day, overseeing projects, overseeing the budget, making sure that things are getting done. And my board at the time told me, Allison, unless you can unless you can find the money, we can't hire you. So they said, start looking through the invoices. I started looking through the invoices in Texas, and I found that our water provider had slowly gone from charging us, $40,000, $20,000 a month to $100,000 a month. And so immediately a red flag. And we had a great board, but we trusted that they were doing the right thing. We signed the payroll every month because we thought, we trust them. And then as we started looking into it, we discovered there was a lot of padding of expenses. And through that, we were able to bring in another service provider who audited the system, and we changed over our water operator. We improved the system, and that's how my position was created. From that, I was getting my MPA at the same time. I had just had twins, so I was managing a water district, getting my master's, and also raising twins at the same time. I think I was crazy. I don't think I could do it today. And then I ended up, I'm from West Michigan. I went to Michigan State for my undergrad, and I saw a position open up in Caledonia, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to apply for this. There's no way they're going to call me." They called me 20 minutes after I applied, and I'm like, "Are you sure you have the right number? Are you sure you want to talk to me?" And they had local candidates. They flew me in from Texas, and I went to the interview. I was up against other local candidates, and I thought, well, they're definitely going to get that. Why would they bring me here? They hired me 2 hours after the meeting, and ever since I've been a township manager of Caledonia. And I will say, like, running a township was a complete change from what I was doing. I mean, it wasn't so different, but the way we ran our board in Texas was that there was a president, and then you hired, everybody else was appointed. So your treasurer, all of those things were appointed. So it was a learning curve, but I've learned a lot in the 2.5 years I've been there. It's been a great experience. It's incredible how much townships actually do. And it's like nobody knows what we do until something goes wrong. They just expect everything. We know quiet means everything is going well. It's when people start getting upset, we're like, where's the kink in the system? What's going on? So that's how I ended up in the township realm. And I've been there ever since. And I enjoy it. I love working on the local level. I like working with people and residents and learning their stories and where they came from and what they want and how I can help them. So
To follow up on Jim's question, is there any significant issues in Caledonia that are like we have our short-term rental issue that we just journeyed through and still continue to journey through? And is there any skirmishes that have challenged your leadership in your leadership at the township?
well, I feel like that's always happening. Every month it's something new that comes up, and right now it's currently data centers. It's the hot topic. We have some industrial land that there's been no moves on it, but people we're planning a joint planning and board meeting to discuss, our industrial standards, and what we'd like to see there, like the size allowances, the setbacks, because we're trying to get ahead of it. But in the past, we've dealt with ordinance issues like, how big can your accessory building be? Because it's a rural area, but it's close to the city. So people still want to feel like they live in a rural area, but they want all the advantages of the city. And with housing expenses becoming more and more expensive, people want those accessory buildings for maybe a second dwelling unit for their children or their aging parents. So we have stuff like that. But I think the current problems that we're facing the day-to-day is we have so many projects going on, and it's just organizing those and making sure we're effectively tackling them, staying on top of them, and keeping them moving forward.
That actually follows into my question that I'm bumping into as a newly appointed part-time manager, and you're addressing the board and the staff in your first month. How do you As I have asked you, in the interview and conversations after that, how do you envision planning with staff and board? And our planning process has been a bit a suspect as far as not robust. How do you foresee this first year in using your planning skills? You just talked about multiple projects. How do you see that rolling out, engaging the board and also your staff?
Absolutely. So I think there's a lot of things, a lot of components that go into that. I think that, the planner themselves need to be very involved with that process with the board and talking about opportunities. But I also think they need to be very aware of what's going on in the community and what the people who live here want. And so it has to be very deliberate, very intentional. You need to have very good discussions of what are the priorities for the next 5 years, but what are the priorities for the next 20, 30, 40 years when we're not around anymore for our children and their children, and what do we want to see this township become? I think one of the biggest challenges is that because there are so many things happening, and I've spoken to Steve about this, we need better systems of tracking where we know where things are in the system. And so if we start projects, whether it's planning or building and zoning, we can have these in a system where we can see where they are. We can see, okay, this is at the planning stages. It's going to the planning commission, or this is in review, or this is going to the board. So there's a lot of transparency of where it's at. And then if things get stalled out, then questions can be asked. But I think a lot of it, the planning process, it has to be collaborative. It has to be working with the staff and the board, but also really taking the input of residents. And I think the people who know what the residents want are often the staff, because those people are coming in every day saying, they might be paying their tax bill, but they're also saying, man, that road over there, it's terrible. Or I wish we had a splash pad at the park. So it has to be very intentional. I think very transparent with the community. We want to invite them in to make sure that they have a voice, but I think a lot of it is collaboration with the staff and the board, making sure that everybody is on the same page.
Thank you.
Just one thing that jumps out to me a little bit is that you've been in Caledonia for about 2 years.
Well, I want to expand my career. I want to continue to move ahead with my career, and I want to be in a place, I guess, I want to be, I don't want to talk about the negatives, but I've had some challenges in my current role. And it has been significant with some of the board not getting along. And then it comes back to the manager. And then also one of my struggles has been, there has been a lot of disconnect between the staff and the board for many years. And so for the past 2.5 years, I have been trying to bridge that gap, and I've been trying to work on raises and better health insurance, compensation studies. And so it has been one of those things where I feel like I have done a lot of that. And I want to work for a board that values their staff, that values their manager, that sees the work they do, and that we're a collaborative group. I think Caledonia is a collaborative group, but there is a little bit of tension that makes getting things, done and moving forward hard. And I would like to work in an environment where my work is valued by the board and by the team, and I value my board and my staff, and we're all working together and we're on the same page and we want good things.
I'll just ask the question because she's raised the issue. I guess I asked our colleagues here, a couple of us, to respond. How do we view the collaboration between the staff and the board right now?
Bill got here. I mean,
Yeah.
being transparent, so I think it's certainly improved since Bill got here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. Jan, you've been here. You're the most tenured person here. I mean, to answer her question, as far as in their situation, there seems to be some tension. How would you view us today?
Yeah, much better today than on the last. We had some ups and downs. Our staff is fantastic. I've been here 36 years. I work full time for a lot of things. Now I'm just in and out of the offices figuring. But, the manager the managers we have had play a very big role in the atmosphere of the office.
Absolutely.
And at this point, I think it's at a high from what we've experienced.
That's great.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
I think.
Yeah, so please.
I think you bring up a good point though, because we as a board are here for the next 3 years. And then the board will change. Some of us will stay, some of us will go, new people will come on and off. How do you foresee that? Let's say that you were in this position and 3 years from now, the board changes. How do you keep that continuity of what you've been talking about, collaborative, staff supportive? How do you make that live past the next board transition?
I think it's a complicated question, but I also think that part of it is I don't know who plans to stay and who plans to go. You know, in a couple of years, we could have the same board or we could have a completely new board. However, I think one of the biggest things that I believe in is that when you have new board members from the very beginning, before they even take office, they should be invited to come into the office to meet the staff and to get a really good understanding of what are the day-to-day operations, put a face to the name, understand, like, look, these are the people who do the work and this is what they're doing. And, start answering questions and be a resource and let them become, let them like know the staff and understand the staff. So when they come to the board, they kind of have a working knowledge of what's going on and how things run. You never know, who will get elected, but I think that you have to make sure that you always treat, you're always fighting for staff, establishing this is our standard, and the manager is always the go-between between the board and the staff, and we try to keep that consistent. The staff, we hope, are not leaving after every 3 years, but part of that is making sure that they feel comfortable in their positions and they don't feel like, okay, some board's going to come in and we're all going to be gone. I don't think people feel that way, but I think that it's really important to make sure that when you have new board members, they are, I don't want to say educated, but they can come in and they get to know what's going on every day with Park, just like me as a manager. So you establish that relationship right away.
Great. Thank you. Let's see. Jim.
I'm just gonna go from one of our list here. What would be your steepest learning curve related to this position? And where would you hit the ground running?
Okay, so the steepest part about learning about this position in my mind is anytime you go into a new role, especially as a municipal manager, is there is so much information that you are learning. So just trying to remember all the things, there's always 100 things going on at once. And it takes a long time to really really understand the heartbeat of a township or a municipality. Like, what are people upset about? That's usually pretty clear, but you're understanding their relationships, the projects. There's a lot of historical information that you learn over time as a township manager. So I think that's the steepest learning curve, is just learning how everything functions. Where I hit the ground running is I want to establish those relationships with the staff immediately. I want to know what everyone is doing. I want to know how I can support them. And I want to know what their biggest needs are from me so that I can help prioritize those to get them what they need to get their job done.
Thank you.
Listen also here. Describe your approach to customer service and in dealing with irate customers.
I deal with that a lot. I think that, you have to have a really good disposition to deal with people who are mad, because I always joke with my current staff, like 90% of the people we're seeing who are coming in, besides if they're paying taxes or water bills, they're not coming in because they want to tell us what a great job we're doing. They're coming in because they're upset. So it depends on how people are approaching us. Like, if somebody calls and they're upset about, they're not getting a building permit, I always want my residents to know that they can talk to me. I'm always available to my residents and my staff. So if they've got a problem, if they're not comfortable talking with, the staff they've been working with, I'm happy to handle it. I'm also happy to handle issues where, the staff doesn't feel comfortable dealing with somebody who's come in who's upset, or, maybe they just need somebody to to take care of it. I'm happy to do that. I think people always feel good when, okay, I can talk to a manager. She's going to fix it. And I have to tell people, I'm not always going to be able to give you the solution you want, but I'm going to listen to you. And we're going to talk about what we can do and what we can't do. So when people who come in and they're upset, I listen to them. I think one of the most important things is just listening to people because they need to feel that they're heard. I think that's 90% of that. And then we go from there. I will say that 98% of the people I deal with who come in irate, I'm able to help get them in the right direction. Often they're irate because they've been spending hours trying to get to the right source. So what I want to do is stop that right away. You're calling me about something in Ottawa County that I don't deal with, but you've called a bunch of people and you haven't gotten the answers you need. I'm going to figure out where you need to go to get help. So I'm not going to tell you, you need to call this person. I'm going to say, let me figure out, let me make some calls for you, and we're going to figure out how we can fix this. And then when I get a hold of the right person, I'm going to point them in that direction or email them with their contact information. I have no problem really being involved with people who are upset. I think that, the way I approach life is that most of the time when people are upset or irate, it's not about us. It's about something that is going on in their lives, and this is the one thing that they can control. So we're here to make their life easier. We can't always give them what they want, but we can help, calm them down. I would say most of the people who leave, there's always going to be one person who you can't make happy, but most of the people that when they leave us, they feel like, okay, I'm getting pointed in the right direction. Even if it's like somebody comes in and it says pave my street, and I say, well, that's not on our list of top priorities, but I will educate them as to why. So they have a better understanding. It's not just a no, and here's why. And so often they'll leave and they'll be satisfied and they're generally diffused at that point. But I just view everybody as most of the time they're not coming in because if they're angry, it's not really about us, it's about something else. But we're always going to be kind, we're always going to be helpful, and we're going to do our best to help them with what we can.
Right.
Sorry, forgive me.
That's okay.
Can I follow up on that question?
Yeah.
Part of the, we touched on it, is, and I think Brian touched on it, said, we have the board will have a 3-year review, and it's called an election. Either we're in or out. We're hiring the manager for the next decade, and you're the face of the manager. As I thought about it, I said, okay, the manager, part of the manager's roles is community facing. In some sense, we're hiring the face of the Park Township for the next decade. Have you considered being part of this community? Now, having lived in Chicago, we were delighted if anything was less than a 30-minute commute. In this community, anything over 10 minutes seems long. I don't know where you live today, but what's your interest of being part of our community?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that if I were hired, I would probably spend a few years commuting and deciding, I'm sure I would fall in love with my community, and then I would talk to my husband and we would move much closer, whether it's in the community or outside. I currently live in the community I represent, and I did that very intentionally. I want to be very, very intentional about where we move to next, especially because I have 3 children. I want them to have opportunities. I think there are a lot of opportunities in Park Township. The fire chief showed me this West Ottawa school, and I mean, you have a beautiful location, but I believe in if this is the right fit, then I would definitely consider moving closer to Park. Right now, I don't have any problems commuting. It's about 40 minutes from here. That's not an issue for me. It's that moving is it's a big challenge because my children are getting older. They have friends. I don't want to move them continuously. I want them to feel secure where they are. So I'm willing to sacrifice my time in commuting versus uprooting them. But I think that, if I'm here 4 or 5 years and I'm like, this place is awesome. I want to be closer, not only for the commute, but I think this is the right place to raise my family. We will relocate. out here. I mean, we're not people who live in the city. We live in these areas anyway. So this is the type of community that I would want to call home.
During the interview or the lunch that Bill and I had earlier, you asked me a question, and I want the team to hear your answer again. You had asked a question about inside out, and I had said, well, I hope you are comfortable being the outside face of the township. And could you share your answer again, saying your engagement? You had you answered us. I remember at the lunch quite enthusiastically about the activities outside the office that you're involved with. Could you share that energy? Yes, you manage your staff well. You talked about that already, but talk about what the outside conversation or interest you might have.
So when I came to Caledonia, it was very insulated. The current manager was also the treasurer, and he really didn't leave the office. You know, he was a dentist for 30 years, so this was kind of his second career. He really saw his position as being inside the office, running the day to day. That's not my perspective. My perspective is that if you hire a capable staff, it shouldn't matter if you're there or not. They should be able to do their job. So a lot of what I focused on in Caledonia was really developing relationships with other organizations that work with our township. So I work really heavily with the road commission, with the county, with neighboring municipalities, and with the DNR. And through that, I was able to get grant money. Through working with the Kent County Road Commission, I was able to, we didn't have a maintenance department, so I was able to get a contract with them for mowing our trails. That's not even what they do, but I was able to get them to come out. I've been able to get a lot of additional funding. I just believe that, you know, the key role of a manager is to develop those relationships with your partners so that when it comes to consideration of funding, you're somebody they think about. You're somebody they want to fund. You're somebody they want to invest in. And it really comes down to relationships. Who goes to the table? Who goes to those meetings? I really make a concerted effort to really be a part of that, to develop those relationships, because as you develop those relationships, it's not just about getting grants or getting funding. You can rely on those people when you don't know the answer to a question or you need help. I told Steve the other day, I go, when you're in government, you're not trying to reinvent the wheel. You're trying to figure out the wheel that works and apply it to your municipality. And so we're not here to really create new things. We're here to say, okay, this works the best and we're going to apply it here. And the way that happens is you make those connections, you make those relationships, you don't just stay here, you kind of move out. I think everybody manages in a different way, but that to me is a really, really important aspect of this job. I think is going to be managing the relationships. So you're making those connections with people who maybe it's not just, you know, in my opinion, it's not just like the road commission, it's not just the county, it's also you're meeting with citizens. And as you meet with citizens, they're sharing their knowledge and their local, you know, interests. And maybe, you know, you're trying to redo the Mottman Center and you meet a guy who says, oh my gosh, I know somebody who does amazing woodworking. And he's done this for here, here, and here. It's about developing those relationships so that you have the best services for your municipality.
Thank you.
You took my question. I can go in tandem with that. So in addition to relationships with services like sewer, police protection, and road maintenance, and you touched on this a little bit with regard to community engagement, but what is your philosophy with keeping residents informed regarding critical issues related to the community? And if you have any examples of that.
Absolutely. So when I came to Caledonia, one of the biggest jobs they had for me was to develop a communications plan. And so I developed a strategic communications plan. Part of that was creating a social media account that people couldn't comment on, but we could post information on. So it's purely educational. They could share it and comment on another page, but not on the township page. And so 3 times a week I post like, okay, this is going on here, or the road commission has this update about the roads. It's just, I understand with social media, you can't do it all the time. Because if you do it all the time, nobody pays attention. But if you do it a couple of times a week, people are sharing it, they're paying attention. And a lot of times they want to know they're curious. They just want to know what's going on. So that was the first thing I did. And then I worked with my supervisor at Caledonia Township on a community report. And that happened once every 4 years. And I started talking to my supervisor and I said, really, a community report every 4 years it's not enough. And so I do the community newsletter and we send it out with every tax bill. And I work with departments and I ask different departments every newsletter for an article, what they believe is the issue that's most affecting our residents. And then on my part, I do articles too, but I do them mostly on the things that people are curious about, like, oh, what's the road work plan for this year? So it's just that knowledge and education. Also with communications beyond that, I have implemented staff meetings. They didn't have staff meetings before. And part of those staff meetings, I'm bringing in those other entities to educate my staff so they feel empowered to answer those questions. And also, I believe it's really important because when somebody calls and they have a question about the road, we don't want to send them to the road commission. If my staff can answer those questions, that's only one place they need to go. And you're fostering that trust and that relationship and that transparency of we're here for you. And we do go above and beyond what our job is to make sure that, we're not just here to do taxes and planning. We also know what's going on and we're going to help you in any way we can. Thank you.
This is kind of going off one of the questions for those that are paying attention to this. What is your relationship? Let me rephrase that. How do you see your relationship with the board in the week to week and then the long-term
Absolutely.
planning, etc.?
So I think the relationship, it really depends on what the township sets up. In Caledonia, my relationship was I was supervised by the supervisor, and that's a really uncommon relationship. Usually it's the manager over the whole, like the board is over the manager as a whole. So it depends on what the municipality decides they want to go with. But in the past, what I do a manager's report twice a month because in Caledonia we have 2 meetings a month. But I also, if there's a big issue, I really like to communicate as much or as little as my board wants me to. But over time you learn about what are the interests of your board. Like there's going to be some board members who want to know what's going on with roads. And I'm going to make sure that they get that information. But if there's another board member who's like, I don't care. That's too much information. So I really try to tailor it to what are the interests? What are the things that are going on? If it's a big thing, I'll send an email out to the entire board, but otherwise it's reporting every month, making those phone calls, making sure that if something happens, there's an email that's sent out, whether to maybe the 3 people who are really involved or the entire board. It really depends. Sometimes it's like we have a dam in Caledonia and I've got one civil engineer on the board. And I know if there's any news about that dam, I'm going to send the supervisor and the civil engineer on the board that information. But my clerk might not really care about the dam. So she wants to know things about, okay, this happened at the cemetery. So I really try to get to know the board. I try to figure out what they're passionate about. And so hopefully they're on those committees and then we're having those relationships and they can help be a supporter of those things when they come to the board.
How about what is your involvement with long-term planning over a 3-year term, 5-year term, and how you're interacting and or directing? What do you see your role as?
So in my township, the first year I came on board, I was working on the master plan and the 5-year parks and rec plan. So it was like immediately like the fire hose. And a lot of it is I let the planner do their job in planning and then we sit down and we go over it and that person is responsible for reporting it to the board. But I make sure that all parties are aware of what is going on. I was more involved, not so much in the planning of the 5-10 year like the master plan, but the park plan. I was the head of the parks department and facilities. So I really worked on that with consultants, but I believe that my involvement with the planning of the 5, the 10, the 20-year plan of the township is one, working with the planner and making sure that the planner is in alignment with the board and bringing in the board and having those conversations and really figuring out like, what is it that everybody wants and how can the person who that's the expert in that field put it together to message it? And then also my job is to implement it. So once that is approved, I'm implementing those things. I'm checking the boxes. I'm making sure that those things are getting done.
I'll follow up on that question. We are on the site of arguably the biggest park development that the township has taken on, the community park. This park will most likely live beyond, the development will live beyond this board. And so we'll probably arguably have a 10 to 15-year plan. Have you had any projects that require a long-term view on a park that would mirror what we're trying to do here? Because I think our dreams are bigger than our pocketbooks. But yet we want to appropriately communicate to our residents that there is a plan. And up until this point, we probably have not represented what the plan is. Have you done anything like that?
Absolutely. I'm currently working on a parks and rec plan in Caledonia with trails. You have a developed system here. I'm sure you're still putting them in, but you already have 50+ miles of trails. So I'm currently working on an engagement process with a consultant where we've done 3 public open houses. We're bringing people in. We're getting to know what they want, and then we're taking our vision and putting it with the public's vision to what is attainable, what can we afford, and then we're parceling it out. So in the next 5 years, we're going to do these. In the next 10 years, we're going to do these, all with the understanding of costs are rising. Inflation is at a rate it hasn't been since the 70s. Everything costs more. And so we have to tell people, yeah, this is part of our 5-year plan, but it's going to depend on how much it costs. We in the township have one township park. They did that 5 years ago. However, 6 years ago now, they did like 80% of it. They still have parcels of the park that are open. Like, what are we going to do next? So part of that parks planning process was going to the public and saying, well, what do you want? Of course, everybody wants more pickleball, in the dog park, people want more dogs, there's always the competing interest. And then the disc golf, people want more disc golf. But I think a lot of it is, what is it that your community wants now? But also, pickleball is really popular now, but is it going to be popular in 10 years? Do you want to add 20 more courts, or, do you want to put a splash pad in for kids? Because they'll come. Although you're close to Lake Michigan, do you really need a splash pad? Are people going to come here versus the lake? I think there's a lot of public engagement that needs to happen. I am heavily involved in park planning. I really enjoy it. I enjoy, the process of what could be and figuring out what people want.
Yeah, thank you.
This is kind of a little bit of a complicated question, but what is your ultimate question? What is your experience with litigation? As you know, we are ramping up with a federal lawsuit and a suit to the Michigan Court of Appeals. What experience do you have with litigation? Or
I have a lot of experience with litigation. When we came to Caledonia, we were involved in a sign lawsuit. We got sued for First Amendment violation. A sign company wanted to come and put a sign in, and it was denied based on the fact that it didn't meet the requirements. The person who wanted to put it in came back, sued the township. I think when it comes to litigation, you have to be very careful. You have to be careful about going into closed session, your communication with your lawyer, having attorney-client privilege. I'm very involved in it, but I worked hand in hand with like the supervisor to go into those sessions with the judges. It never got to the level of a state court case, but there have been multiple issues with litigation that I have been involved in, whether it's somebody who is not following up on their enforcement, or paying their fines and it has to go to litigation, or it's a lawsuit. And I think it really needs to be handled with care, discretion, respect on both sides. We're all here. Even the people who are filing the lawsuit, they're still our residents. So it's just a very fine line of, working with lawyers, maintaining confidences, maintaining communication with the board, and really trying to keep that relationship, even though these are hard things and, it gets contentious, you have to keep it professional because at some point this is going to end and you're still going to be working with the people who filed these lawsuits. So I have experience. I'm not a lawyer, but I've worked with litigation and lawsuits a couple of times with the township. So I'm familiar with those. And they were settled.
Yeah.
And I'm like, thank God.
I have a couple questions. What is the structure of Caledonia right now? Do they have full-time supervisor, treasurer, deputy?
Yeah. So currently all of our elected officials are part-time. And so we have deputies for all of those departments and the staff is phenomenal. I mean, they are so lucky to have that staff. They are so knowledgeable and not even just knowledgeable, like the way that they work with people and how much they know about the community. I think they make the elected officials' job very easy and they make them look very good. And so, whether you're on a board where the elected officials are heavily involved or they have deputies, I think that that's it's all about those relationships and fostering good relationships and making sure there's communication and that whether it's a deputy or the clerk, they are all on the same page.
Okay, and then sometimes there's a little strife in the workplace, which creates a toxic environment. And it makes it beyond productive. And as a township manager, how would you address this kind of situation?
I think that it's really important for your manager to be trustworthy. And so your staff needs to be able to come to you to tell you the problems that are going on. But you're as a manager, you're in a very difficult position because you need to always stay above whatever is going on. And so when there are issues, my staff always knows that they can come and talk to me. And there are times I can help them. And there are times I cannot help them. Like if it's a work related issue, we're going to work through it. But if it's just you don't like what your teammate is eating for lunch, they're going to have a conversation with each other. So I think that as in my position, I really try to foster a team. I have a lot of team building. I try to do Christmas parties because I want my staff to want to come to work. Like most of my staff, they're moms. And so, they're coming and we're drinking coffee and we're talking about what our kids did this weekend. And I think when there's conflict, when you have one bad apple, it ruins it for everybody. And so I think that a lot of it is when you have a toxic environment, you need to analyze, okay, what is the solution here? And sometimes the solution is that person needs to find another place. And so I think, in my experience, when I've had a toxic employee and I see that it's a problem, what I'm going to first do is probably have a conversation with a supervisor and just let them know what's going on. And then I'm going to try to figure out ways, can we fix this? Or is this something that is beyond repair? And then we'll go from there. Obviously, I'm going to try to fix it. I would only bring it to the supervisor or the board's attention if it was disrupting the whole staff. But I do think that I understand what happens when you have one person who can ruin it for everybody and how quickly that can go downhill. And when I started at Caledonia, there was a lot of energy of certain people didn't like other people. And what ends up happening is when you get a new manager, you've got a new coach on the team. So you either follow the rules of the manager, and I'm not saying like, oh, this is how the rules are going to be. It's either you get on board with the style or you leave or you retire. And so what has happened in Caledonia is in the time I've been there, the people who have not been happy or have created that toxic attitude have left on their own because they're like, oh, they're doing this and I don't like Christmas parties and I don't like these things. And the people who want to be there, they rise to the occasion. And so it is a difficult thing to balance, but I think that when you have somebody who really is a problem, first you want to see if you can fix it. But if you can't fix it, then you need to find another path. Like, is this person really the right fit for the organization? But I do think you should do everything you can to maintain them, especially if maybe it's a problem, maybe they're just upset because they haven't gotten a pay raise. I want to talk to that person. What's going on? I want to get a feel for how I can help them. And if I can't help them, we're going to have a conversation of, is this really the right fit for you?
You relate to that.
I've just gone through that.
It was not my favorite thing to go through.
You can have a sidebar routine.
I'm sure I could have a lot of conversations. And townships are weird too, because with townships, you have people who've been there for 30 years, these aren't people who are hiring and leaving every couple of years. I mean, these are people who live in the community, who've been doing their job for years and years. And sometimes when you come in as a new manager and you say, hey, why are we doing things this way? We should be getting into the next century, not just for us, but for our residents. Sometimes people have a hard time coming to terms with that. So sometimes you've got to take it slowly, but there are other times where it's like, okay, yeah, we have to do it. It's not a choice anymore. We have to go to this method because what we have been doing isn't working. And people aren't always happy when they have to change, what they've been doing for so many years. It can be difficult. But I think if you have the right attitude and you let them know that you're in it for them and they're in it for the right reasons, you can work it out. Sometimes you can't. But
Lauren.
How do you balance the board's directives with community needs?
that's a really good question. Well, I would hope that the direction of the board is in alignment with a lot of the community needs. It should be. That's my job as a manager and the staff. So we should be in alignment with that. But every once in a while, an issue pops up that none of us are aware of. And it's really important that when that happens, the proper measures are taken. Either if it's just something going on that we can resolve in the staff, that the board is aware of it. But if it's something that needs, if it needs to go to the board because it needs approval, like if a road has like so many potholes and we need to write a check to get them fixed, I'm going to make sure that that gets to the board, in a timely manner. I'm going to have, and when the community reaches out to me to let me know, I'm going to keep in touch with them until those things get done or until there's a resolution. I'm not going to just say, I'm working on it. I'm going to say, let me look into that. I'll get back to you. And then, hopefully the same day I can get back to them and say, hey, I looked into it. This is the process we have to go through. There may be a time where I can't do anything more, but if there is a solution, I'm going to help them get to it. And I'm going to bring it to the board if it gets to that. If it's in my power to get it done, I would prefer, like if I have the, if an air conditioning unit went out here and I have the ability to get it done, I'd rather do that than take it to the board if it's within my spending, capacity, because I don't want the board to deal with those type of things. You should be dealing with the things that are imperative to the community right now. And so if I can solve the community's issues without the board, if they're simple things, I will do everything in my power to go to the right resources to help get those things fixed. But if it's something that needs board action, I will make sure that the board is aware of it and that it comes to the board.
I'll follow up on that question. Sometimes a board member will come in with a particular aim on something, and we've seen it on the outside. Look north to Howard County, and how we're running. Certain things come in, and I think it puts undue pressure on the staff leader position. And how do you deal with that strife? I mean, because when I've been on the board longer, Jim and I can remember, we had a particular board member who came in with a particular agenda, and then it put extreme pressure not only on the board but on our manager. And you said through it. How do you deal with some of that strife? Electeds are, unfortunately, they get elected, and you sometimes can't pick your friends. Have you had a situation where you have whether it's in Texas or California, where you have that oddball work, and you go like, okay, how do you deal with it?
Absolutely. That happens all the time, anywhere you are. I think that the board needs to remember that not one person makes all the decisions. It's the entire board that makes the decision. And so when you have somebody who comes in and they have a particular issue, you have to decide is this an issue that is important for the whole board, or is this something that is personal? Because obviously there are things that go on that take priority, like things we have to get done. And sometimes the issues when a singular board member comes, there are things that need to be taken care of over time. And I don't believe in, I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to investigate it. I'm going to see what the solutions are. We're going to work towards goals, but I think that we have to stay on the same page of, this is what the board wants us to do. This is what we're going to focus on. If it's a decision that you feel is important, we should probably bring it to the board to decide if it's important for the entire board, not just one person. And then once it becomes important for the board, then it's part of our duties as the staff. But I think that we have to be very careful not to let one person who has an agenda on one thing take over everything that is going on, because we're a machine. We're always working. We're always working on the next things for the future, the next projects, and we only have so many hours in the day. So if there's something that they feel really passionate about, I would probably talk to them. And if it's something I think, the board probably, let's have the board decide if this is a priority. Then we can bring it to the board. I mean, we can make 5-year plans, we can make 20-year plans, but we don't know what's going to happen next year that will be, the thing we have to deal with. So we have to be able to be flexible to take on, issues that maybe we don't foresee right now. I mean, we have to keep those long-term goals in mind, but there's always things that happen that come up. And if it's a priority for one person and the board agrees, then it's a priority. But I think it's really important that board members and everybody, like, you have to keep your personal, and then what you do on the board is for the community as a whole. So you need to decide as the manager, is this a community problem? Is it a singular problem? How are we going to deal with this? Is it an issue I'm going to talk to Steve about and he says, let's bring it to the board? Or is it something that I'm going to say, you know what? We can talk to other people, but it's not something we can deal with right now. But I do believe in informing the board of those types of things anyway, so you're aware. And maybe I don't think it's an issue, but you do, so I'm going to bring it to you and let you know, and let the board decide if it's an issue or not.
I always sensitive to do a time check, Bill. What's the window of time we have right now?
We got about 10 minutes.
10 minutes. I want to make sure I give Allison enough time to ask questions of us, but also please.
I don't know how quick it'll be.
No, that's fine.
So we are a community of extremes from the perspective of, we have incredible second home, lakefront homes. We have people who are trying to figure out how they're going to pay rent. I think a relatively low millage rate, and a community that's kind of millage adverse, I would say. Would that be fair?
Hey,
I would think so.
we
have all these wonderful things that we want to do. How would you as a manager balance that out when you're talking to someone who, and you just said the extremes, right? And everybody's perspective around villages, and yet there are bike paths we have to maintain, there are parks we need to maintain. And every time we add something, it's one more thing to maintain, there's one more cost associated with that. How do you see that? What's your fiscal sense, if you will, around those issues?
So I just was involved in pushing a public safety millage through last year, so I'm pretty intimately familiar with the process. But I think that part of it is not only transparency, but people need to know what they're voting for, in the sense, like, as a board, I would come and say, hey, if we do 1 mil, this is what that means overall, but this is what it means to the average, like the taxable value of their home. Like if their home is 350,000, it means $3 of their taxes are going to go to this millage. I think it's like, you got to do the work. You got to figure out what, because you don't want to overtax your people. You don't want to ask for too much, but you need to be able to fund your different services. What we've done in Caledonia with the fire service is we renewed the millage, but I was talking to Steve about this yesterday, and I think, what ended up happening was it still wasn't enough. So the general fund is now supplementing the public safety fund. And in my opinion, we should have just funded the public safety fund, because in understanding millages, generally, especially in West Michigan, the public, even if they're millage adverse, they want to fund public safety. I mean, everybody wants to fund firefighters and police generally. And so generally they'll give you what you ask for. I think it's a little bit more difficult when it comes to parks, because people often just want to think, I want to get them in, but they don't want to think about what it costs to maintain them. So I think a lot of it is giving the scenarios to the board of what it's actually going to cost, how much money is going to come in from the millage, like is it going to be sufficient? Does there need to be supplementation from the general fund? And how does that translate to our taxpayers? What does that really mean? I mean, they see a millage, oh, it's 1 mil. How much? That's a lot of money. And then, you can break it down for them and say, this is the taxable value of your home. This is the percentage you pay. And this is the amount that goes to this millage. And they're like, oh, it's only $15 a year. Yeah, no problem. So it's all about proper messaging and letting them know what they're going to get in return for approving those things. And we can't, as a public municipality, we can't tell people to vote for millages, but we want to make sure that they have the education to know what they're paying.
We can tell them facts.
Yes.
Any other burning questions? And then I'll open up to Allison to ask us questions. Okay, all right. Yeah. What do you have for us?
Well, I'm curious to know what everybody feels like are the biggest issues in Park, and what you would like to see the future of. What is the future in your mind for Park Township?
I'd be very curious. Let's go right down the line here. I mean, or popcorn, and I'm sure we have some issues. Good. Or opportunities, let's
The
say.
biggest current issue is short-term rentals. We made our decision, but there's a little uproar out there yet. I think the next one is the residents, now that this isn't an airport and we have the park, they're wanting to know how and when it's going to be developed. And I think we've been lax in publicizing overall plans and even coming up with future. We've done it up to this point, but our thoughts and stuff have changed. So I think this area, and I think people in our township want to keep us residential. We love it here.
That's
great.
I think in one of the things that you were talking about earlier, to Jan's point, we have this park and everybody has their own specific vision as to what this park is going to look like. And yet we have countless other parks around the township that people have their idea about, and pickleball courts and bike paths and all these different things. I think one of the things you mentioned is critical to the next 10 years, 15 years. If we had a development plan that was publicized and people understood, hey, we're talking about a community center, but that's something that's a decade away. We are talking about this other thing over here, and that's 5 years away, or this is 3 years away, or whatever the case may be. I think it would give our township a better perspective on, okay, we bought this Coast Guard station. Here's what we're thinking about the Coast Guard station for the next quote unquote decade. And if there's a big centering of energy around, yeah, but we really want this now. Okay, well, then let's rearrange all these other things so that we can do that. Understand that it's not everything at once. There's a cost, there's an expense. And I think we need a board that's on page, we need a manager that's on page, we need a staff that's on page with quote unquote that plan. And then an understanding and transparency around that throughout our community. And I think figuring that out is not going to be for the faint of heart.
No.
You have to own that, right? It's like whether you work for a company or you own the company. You need to own that.
Can I ask? I've seen there's a separate website for Park called Gather Park. And it looks like it was done a couple of years ago where it seems like there was an attempt to get the public's, thoughts and what they wanted. What happened with that plan? Okay, the community center.
The township's ideas around what a community center should look like and how it should be. And so that was created specifically for kind of looking at that specific opportunity /issue.
That's great.
The unique environment in Holland is that even things have changed in the last 3 or 4 years. You have a $60 million pool complex going up 2 miles away from us. Holland Township just put a $13-14 million complex 5 miles from us. You have the Aquatic Center that continues to pull people in. Evergreen Commons is putting a $40 million expansion on their building in renovation. And then also Hound City announced a recreation building. And there's a wealth of money going into recreation. And our township we just don't have the budget to chase them. And so I think we're trying to figure out our role in the ecosystem around here. And back to my colleague's comment about our township is a bit millage adverse. We're a bedroom community that has the ability to visit all these places for free or for a minimal cost, but we don't necessarily have it on our tax bill. And so it's an interesting time. I mean, what's our role with our limited resources to play in the recreation field? And so, you ask about the issues. I think that one of the issues that we haven't brought up, but it continues to be brought up by our colleagues at the county is water. Okay, what are we going to, even though we have this unlimited resource across the way, what are we doing about water when aquifers are being depleted? We had a significant skirmish with a development about water just down the road. And it raised the issue about people are really passionate about their ponds going up and down with development. And we can't ignore those issues. I mean, that's an issue that it actually is a 10-year issue. It's not a 10-month issue. It's a 10-year issue. So I would say water is an issue, and then housing. Housing issue when it's difficult for a entry-level teacher to find a place to live near where she works. We can put our head in the sand and say, well, that's not my problem, because all the developments that are coming are 500, 600, we haven't approved a development that's under $500,000 to $600,000 per house in 2 or 3 years. In fact, I don't think during our tenure, I haven't approved one. But yet we still expect a teacher to come and get paid $55,000 a year at West Ottawa schools and live near where she works. Well, she can't. Let's just be honest. She can't. He or she can't. And so I think that's an issue that a board like ours should feel the tension. Do we have a solution? No, but we should feel the tension and lean into these conversations. So I think those are on my list. It's the housing again, but those are 3 to 5 to 10-year issues, and a list beyond this board. But we need a leader who can shepherd and be involved in those type of discussions.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, coming from Texas, you have a water scarcity. So it's something, that lives in your mind every day. You don't want those pumps to run dry, and the pumps are a mile deep. Like, that's how far you have to go down. And I think that, the decisions of a board just can't be for the decisions of today or in the next 5 years. We really have to think about, our children and their children and what we want this township to look like in 20 years. And so it is, how are we going to make sure that they can afford homes? And we can't always control that, but we certainly can, encourage those developments that come in and they're offering the starter homes in certain areas. But it is definitely something that has to be always on the top of your mind, where you're thinking, okay, how are we anticipating the needs of the future that are things that we don't worry about today, but our children will have to worry about.
Sure they will. Jim, Joan, Lauren? Yeah.
I would say one of the biggest issues that we have is controlling growth.
Yeah.
Because this is a very desirable place to live. It's a wonderful community. And how do we control that growth? We've got the blueberry farms north of us. We want to protect those. We've got the short-term rentals bearing down on us. How do we protect, in a sense, what we have?
Yeah, a lot of future zoning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Lauren?
Our big one is public safety. You just mentioned earlier, we've been through the last few years with the sheriff's department. We used to have a T unit that would run medicals and such, and they got rid of the program. The fire department had to take over that, which essentially had to fire or hire 4 more full-time firefighters. And right now they work 6 A to 6 P, 7 days a week, so there's nobody on the clock at night. Summer's coming, it's getting busier. I can see that coming where we're gonna have round the clock coverage. We have 1 Park Township deputy through the sheriff's department, so public safety is gonna keep growing and growing too.
Mhm.
You need to make sure they have their resources so they can do their jobs effectively. And also compensate them so they want to stay. They don't get poached by other departments.
Did you say poached?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
No. I don't have anything to add. You guys covered them all.
Tim, good. All right. I'd like to say thank you to Allison. Appreciate your willingness to put your name out there and communicate your interest in leading our township. I think we had a good hour chatting with you. I hope you presented yourself well and you feel confident that you covered what you wanted to cover. So, but board, thank you for your good questions and engagement. We'll take a little break, right, Bill? Is it a couple minute break or are we going right into more donuts?
Back, 10:30.
Yeah, 10:30. Thanks, Al. And feel free to jabber with us as well. So, all right, team, we are ready for our next applicant, Mr. Matthew Butts. Just a little history, or not history, if there's such a thing. 2 weeks ago, Brian, Jim, and I and Bill had breakfast with Matt. And so we might have a little more knowledge about this gentleman, Matt, but welcome back.
Matt Butts.
Do we need a rise, when he comes in the door? You said it. So like.
See you again.
Good to see you.
Sure. Thing eaten before.
You said it with such gravitas, Bill. That was cute. All right, well, welcome, Matthew. And I think you know the drill, and hopefully you're ready for a fun conversation. As I said to my colleagues in the first conversation, we have a series of questions that are a suggested way to go through it. But as we found in the last conversation, we had plenty of interruptions both ways, clarifying questions from Allison, but also questions from us, follow-up questions on what you said. So we do have a series of questions, but we're not going to adhere, completely to it. But I'll just start the question. Who's Matthew? And a little bit of the kind of background leading up to this and why you're here. Kind of like give us, warm us up to you.
All right. Well, first, thank you for this opportunity. It's an honor to be here. Again, thanks for this opportunity. Matt Butts, I've been in the local government business for 25 years. My family, my wife and I have been married for 24, together for over 30. 3 kids, 18, 15, and 12. Very busy. My wife's an English teacher for Farmington High School. Pretty active. We like to camp and hike. In my downtime, when I find it, I like to fish. I like to hunt. I like to hike. Anything outdoors is a good thing for me. Helps bring you down and equalize after all the pressures of local government leadership. So I'm here today looking at this opportunity. To be a manager has been a goal. Again, I've been in the business 25 years. All of it has been as the assistant. I worked for a city manager, Ken Crombie in Granville, for 16 years before he retired. And the plan was for me to follow Ken into the manager job. City council decided to go another way, and that was their prerogative. And at that point, I was going to start looking at other opportunities. Well, I got diagnosed with leukemia. So that took me out of the game took me out of work for 15 months. And that during that time, there were a lot of other opportunities that I think would have been a good fit. I'm a West Michigan guy, born and raised. I got zero interest in going to the southeast side of the state where there are many opportunities often. I had some really good advice early on by a senior manager who told me be very selective in the places that you put your application. You don't want to go to some of these meat grinders that just turn managers in and out. Be selective. What I find here is a very high quality life. I met your staff, a wonderful staff. Bill told me they were good, and boy, it's built right. The conversations I've had with the selection committee and listening to y'all the other night during the strategic meeting, it seems like you work well. And I think I could be a good fit here, and I think I could help you as you work through a lot of your strategic goals and go to that next step.
Super. Thank you, man. I'll start this time on the left side. My left, Lauren, would you like to start off with any questions you have or a question off our list? Either or.
I will go with one right off the list. How do you balance the board's directives with community needs?
Well, ideally, the directives are based on the community needs, right? There's strategic goals. You're elected to represent the public and their interest and needs. So that helps the balance. And again, you'll hear people come in, I'm sure you do, with their opinions on things and what they feel they need. Is it a want or is it a need? And you're probably going to hear me use that phrase a couple times this morning as I kind of anticipate some of your questions. Whether it's budget or policy, it's wants versus needs. So because I don't like something that the township is doing or my neighbor is doing that doesn't make it emergent, it doesn't make it a real need for the township to necessarily address. The strategic conversation, I think, is the most important thing the board can go through, especially as you're working on the budget, because I think the budget should reflect your strategic goals. That should be the map to taking the township to its next step and where you want to be.
Can you describe to us your management style?
I prescribe to what's called servant leadership. I want to put myself in a position to give staff the tools that they need to run their departments and to serve the community. Don't like to bark orders. I like to be transparent, open, and honest. My door is always going to be open. If it's closed for a reason. Communication is great. I don't beat around the bush. If there's this issue, then we're going to address it. We're going to have an open, honest conversation about what's going on and what needs to be done. But I'm an open person. That's the way I like to lead. I think I have a good sense of humor. You may tell me differently at the end of this conversation. But I also use that as a tool, right, to help break tense situations. I like to give them what they need to do their jobs.
If I can follow up, Jan, on the question, I was during the conversation 2 weeks ago with us at breakfast, you talked about a communication tool with your staff on a board, if I recall, to keep everybody going the right way. Could you go a little farther with that and just help describe that?
Thank you, Steve. So that goes back to the strategic planning, and we have a sheet that we use that lists all the city councils, all their goals. And on this sheet is what the goals are, who is assigned to that goal, who's our lead person on. If it's a park issue here, then it would be that Ann is going to fix the signs, right? What our steps are, what are some of our objectives in that goal, our benchmarks, and then what is the status of each. So we just use the colors, like the stoplight, red, yellow, and green. If it's red, means we haven't started the school. There has to be a reason for that. Yellow is it's in the process, and green means it's completed. Then we work with council on a quarterly basis. We bring that back to council and say, all right, here is where we are on your objective list. And that gives them an opportunity to say, you know what, maybe what we thought about 3 months ago, maybe that's not as important as something else on the list. Let's move that up and make that a more important goal.
What's the window of time that you're talking about on those type of goals?
It's annual.
Annual.
It's based, and that's our first tool in developing our budget.
Okay.
Talked about at breakfast. I use a whiteboard for kind of my task list. And on that is 4 months. I would go further, but I can't fit more months on my whiteboard. So that's the month of January. This is what I got going on for the Planning Commission, the Downtown Development Authority, our Brownfield authorities. Kind of busy right now. So these are things that they're working on. What are the next steps? What is February looking like? And then by the 4th month, there's not a lot there, right? But if something's popping and we're hearing about something, we'll get that on the board So I know perhaps if I got to follow up with someone, to give them a call, hey, what's the status of the project? Do you need anything from the city to help? You know, whether it's make a connection with utilities or consumers or something like that.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. What is your philosophy regarding community engagement and keeping residents informed regarding critical issues related to the community? And give some examples.
It's very important. Communication is, again, you're elected to represent the people in their interest. It's my job as a manager to make sure those things are being carried out. Day to day, staff will have a lot going on. Critical things, I would be sending out emails to the board to let you know what's going on. That may be daily, it may be weekly. If we have an issue, I don't want you to hear about it at church, right? I want you to hear about it from me. I don't want you to hear about it at Ken across the street. I want you to hear from me that whatever the issue may be. If it rises to that level, I want you to know about it. Communicating to the public is also very important. And that's, and honestly, in Granville, we've struggled with that. Right now, we're working on a communication plan. We've engaged Sable PR to help us develop that plan, and also during maybe some emergencies where they'd come in and actually help us with that dialogue with the media. But letting people know what's going on. And when I met with staff, we talked about this was a straight line winds with a lot of trees down. Communicating with the news desk to say, hey, we have this issue going on in this neighborhood. We don't need people there. We don't need gawkers there. You know, let our first responders handle that situation and keep that information fresh.
I asked my question already. Jim?
What is your approach to interacting with the board? And as far as you mentioned weekly with your communication, but how about the long term with planning and things like that?
Long-term planning, I think it's important to, at least on a quarterly basis, to take a break from our meeting, maybe put it at the end of a meeting, or maybe we meet half hour, an hour before a regular meeting to catch up on a lot of the larger projects where we are with certain things. You can do that in a memo format, which I do with all the, you know, whether it's council or planning commission, brownfield, DDA, zoning board, any of the ones I work with, have a list of updates for them, right? This is what's on the agenda, but here are what's going on with all these other issues or projects that we've discussed previously. You know, they got their building permit, project stalled out, they ran into financial issues, what have you. Just so everyone's on the same page. Again, as a board member, I don't want you finding some of this stuff out and being caught off guard and looking at me or staff and saying, why didn't you let us know? Again, I'm a good communicator. Again, we have some council members who like to stop in on a daily basis. We'll brief them. Some are better with text. Some will do emails. Some will like to set a formal meeting. If they're having issues with residents, the residents are bringing them concerns. Okay, we'll set up a meeting with that council member and that resident to sort this out. Just the way I like to do things. Doesn't make it the right way, but that's how I like to operate.
If I can expand on Jim's questions just a little bit, how do you keep track on the planning process with the board on projects that will outlive the board? For instance, you mentioned DDA, brownfield, and something else. Some of these issues are going to outlive the council or outlive the board. How do you keep track of those and keep the board long-term focus versus, hey, we're getting this done this year? I think there's a mindset of 4 years and we're done, 4 years and we're done, because the board has an evaluation in 3 years. It's called an election, and we may be all gone. But how do you keep those bigger, longer issues? I mean, obviously in Granville over your tenure, you've had long issues. How do you keep multiple boards going on a long-term issue?
So many of those issues will be spelled out in our master plans. We have park master plans, we have our land use master plans. In the land use master plan, we also have a lot of our street master planning. And when we have a new board member, we sit down with them, kind of like an orientation. When we bring them in, all their departments, introduce them to department heads, but also walk through a lot of these projects, right? This is the status of Project X. It should be spelled out if it's in the next 5 years. It's going to be spelled out in the capital improvement plan. We show them our budget, explain the budget process. Right now, we've got a 5-year capital improvement plan. This next budget that we're working on right now, we're going to make that a 7-year plan. Yeah, you get out that far, numbers get a little fuzzier, but at least it plants that seed that yes, this is going to be a project that we're going to tackle this year. Now, the council will look at that, and maybe again, those priorities may shift every year on the budget depending on. We had a fire truck totaled, right? We get an insurance claim, but that also may change the priorities. It's just that open communication, especially with those new board members, so they understand how staff operates, things that staff will need from them. We need communication from the board as much as the board needs communication from us.
Yes.
First, do you prefer Matthew or Matt?
Either, people call me a lot of names.
We have that same problem.
What would you like us to buy? Okay.
Thanks for explaining your onboarding process. I like that. What if you're to come aboard next month, what would your steepest learning curve be related to this position, and where would you hit the ground running?
So my background is on the municipal side of local government. Obviously, I have a learning curve catching up to the township form of government, the general law form of government. Again, and I know a lot of great township managers that I could use as a resource.
Like this guy.
Bill's one of them, but I have a huge network of friends around the state, ranging from Grand Rapids down to some very rural townships that I could lean on, as well as obviously the staff and the township attorney. I'm sure would be a great insight on a number of things. And I want to make sure I establish that communication and relationship early.
Great. Thank you.
What the second half of the question, where would you hit the ground running?
Again, it was great to sit in on the strategic conversation. That kind of gave me a great insight on what your priorities are. I want to make sure I fully understand those and start putting together a plan to implement those goals. The other is I would have to get to know the staff on a personal level. Again, it seems like a great group in the meeting I just came from. But I want to know them on a personal level. I'd want to know about their families, want to know about their hobbies, how many kids they got, where the kids go to school, their ages. And then I'd want to know more about the township, right? Geographically, the history. One thing I'm really impressed with is the park system. I got a great tour by Ann. She's amazing, by the way. I'm sure you know that. But I was really impressed. Like Park Township, you've got a great park system. So, but yes, staff, priorities, goals, and getting to know the township itself.
So you're coming from a township that is lots of services, lots of capabilities, lots of quote unquote services, I would say.
Yep.
The township is not that way. we are a quote unquote a user of a lot of different things. I think the one thing that we do own well is our fire department, our public safety from that perspective. Although we are very much partnered with other county for sheriff's side of things. But outside of that, we use, right? We're a veteran community, we use other people's things. So kind of a 3-point question. What tools do you have to do that coming from a township that quote unquote owns all those services as compared to one that doesn't? What do you see the opportunities associated with that and what are the challenges?
You know, the opportunities, it provides greater resources when you're partnering with your neighboring jurisdictions. As a manager, I expect that our departments are already partnering with our neighboring jurisdictions, especially when it comes to the public safety side. I gave an example in with the employees. I had one of our police officers stop my office a few years back. Wanted to know exactly where the city line was because he felt he got dispatched inside the city of Wyoming. My response to that was, it doesn't matter. You go where dispatch sends you. We all work together. Do not like silos. There'll be a day that we need their help as much as they may need our help today. So a great example of that is Granville has a huge 4th of July parade. We're kind of known for that. It's 2 miles long. And one year we had Vice President Pence show up to walk the entire thing. We needed 19 outside police agencies to help us manage that. And so our philosophy has been, we're going to serve, we're going to help everybody else when they need help, even though compared to some of our neighbors, or even our departments are small. But if they need help with something, we're going to help because one day we're going to need it. And that day we called in all the chips. So the expectation is we're working together. Benefits is that, for instance, the Park Township not having its own police departments are extremely expensive, both staff, training, equipment, extremely expensive. So you're saving your taxpayers a lot of money, but not having a police department. However, you don't have that level of service that, say, a city would, that you're going to have that response within 2 or 3 minutes when a call comes in. So there's, again, Granville is a lot like Park Township in that we expect a high level of service, a high quality of life. But we're also going to be very fiscally conservative. And that's the trade-off, right? If you can be fiscally conservative, you not want to pay for a department like police department, then the trade-offs are we're going to be relying on someone else to provide that service. And it's just, you got to find out where you come from.
Have you had experience, quote unquote, negotiating those things and working with other departments and putting those contracts together for those services?
To some level, we rely heavily on our department heads on those relationships and to develop those contracts. Most importantly, Granville, especially with our fire, we have a lot of automatic aid agreements with the city of Walker, city of Wyoming, and Georgetown Township. So if there's a structure fire on Wilson Avenue, kind of runs right down the middle of Granville. If there's a fire west of Wilson, Georgetown Township automatically responds. If it's east of Wilson, Wyoming will automatically respond. And again, we have to get along with our neighbors. We got to make sure our department heads are working with their neighboring department heads to make sure that we have those services, that if we do have a tornado comes through town, that it's just not our people responding. We're relying on our neighbors to help us out. And the expectation is you are going to help if they need help.
Describe your approach to customer service and dealing with irate customers.
I've never had an irate customer. Customer service is what we do. We're in local government to serve, right? I sat down with the city manager this year for my yearly review and what my goals were. I think I wrote down the better, I forget the terminology I use, but to love the ones that are hard to love. they're residents, they pay their taxes, they may be difficult to deal with. But they may have a legitimate complaint, even though they're irate. It's a bad day. Their wife may be sick, or their parents, they may be ill, or you never know where people are coming, right? So you got to meet them there as a public servant and say, okay, if this is an issue, let me help you with this issue. Let me take this off the plate. Some people, you're never, gonna win their trust. They're gonna be irate. And you gotta have a conversation with them. You know what? We've tried to help you. You're still irate. Is there anything else we can do? If not, I'm sorry. Have a good day. They deserve to be heard for sure. But to a point, you can't let them abuse the staff verbally. And I've had to ask people to leave City Hall. You just got to be respectful. Both ways.
Have you had situations in public situations where you've had to de-escalate public comment or difficult people on, I know you sit often on boards looking at public comment. How have you handled some of that type of disgruntlement? I'm sure Granville has had maybe an issue or two like we have.
Sure. We had for a while a pet store in town that was buying puppies from puppy mills and selling them for thousands of dollars. And it wasn't on an agenda. It wasn't anything that the city could even control. But at a regular Monday night council meeting, the room filled up. We can comfortably fit 50, about 200 people. It was standing room only. They took over the meeting, and the council was gracious enough, although we couldn't do anything about it, to just listen to it. Again, you just got to listen to people. We always have the police chief is at all the council meetings. If someone would get out of hand, we've never experienced that. We've had people use 4-letter words and stuff like that, and the mayor will remind them that's not appropriate. But we've never come across a situation that was dangerous. Again, I've had to escort people out. We do have in the office emergency buttons under the desk. We've had to use those a couple times when we've asked people to leave and they refuse, and it's the easy way or the hard way. We prefer the easy way. We really do.
Yeah. Thank you. How did the pet issue resolve itself?
It eventually went out of business.
Okay, all right, thank you. We won't go down that. Anyway. Yeah.
Okay, sometimes there's strife, trouble in the workplace, which creates a toxic environment and makes it everything unproductive. As a manager, how would you address this type of situation?
You got to address it head on and deal with the individuals causing the issue. Have a conversation with them. Ask them why they're doing these things or feel the way they feel. It's inappropriate. Tell them it's inappropriate. Maybe you got to give them a plan. Maybe you have to meet with them on a regular basis to check in with them. We have an issue recently where we actually sent two of our employees to an occupational psychologist to work out a difference that they were unable to work out amongst themselves. One of them came out and did wonderful. The other one remains doing what they do and still causing issues, and that's where it gets really difficult. Often someone will have their toes over the line just enough to cause the issue, then they pull them back short of further punishment, whether it's suspension or termination. We had one employee for years. She was always difficult. Always had her toes over the line. Her department head was not a strong department head at all. So often I'd be there helping this department head out. We'd have this employee on an improvement plan. She'd improve. A month later, she was right back where she was. And then we had a young Hispanic woman working in that department who showed up in my office one day in tears because some very insensitive and racist comments this one employee made. So I suspended that employee. I did an investigation and ended up terminating the employee. You can't put up with things like that. That's like, don't get real upset very often. But after meeting with that employee when she was in tears, that really ticked me off. I had to go out and walk around the block because I was that upset. So I just don't put up with that.
Yeah, I don't know. Very appropriate.
Okay. Share an example of a decision you made upholding policy or regulations that you knew would be unpopular with the public or with employees. And as you know, we've got a couple issues here.
So we have a family in Granville. They have a swimming pool. And every summer they give swimming lessons in their pool. And this has gone on for decades. Well, the swimming lessons draws hundreds of families per day to these swim lessons. And the street is U-shaped, but it's very short. So there's not a lot of parking. And it got to a point where people were finding used swim diapers in the bushes, children using the bushes to relieve themselves. Parking congestion, parking in front of mailboxes, parking in front of driveways, which that violates our home occupation ordinance, right? So I sent a letter, hey, this is an issue. We kind of looked the other way for years until we started getting some serious complaints. That was extremely unpopular. She kind of sent all of her customers she's had over decades to me. And they were verbally attacking me, telling me they hope my kids drowned. That sort of thing. And so we finally were able to sit down with this individual and say, again, we know this is important to you. Obviously, it's important to the community because you have many, many community members who use your services. But parking's an issue, litter's an issue. So there's a family fair kitty corner. Why don't you have you people park at family fair and walk over? And so that's kind of the resolution we came up with. You know, making sure that they're being respectful of the neighbors and surrounding community. So she was able to continue the lessons.
So she had a home occupation permit?
We don't require permits for home occupations. But the letter I sent her told her she was in violation of her home occupation ordinance because the parking congestion, the litter, and the other nonsense that was going on.
Yeah. I got to shift the channel and talk about problems. You've been in the business for a couple decades. What's a significant accomplishment you'd like to share with us that might be relatable to what we do here? That you've led through your
So my second day in Granville, the city manager came to my office and said, in an hour you have a meeting downtown with 40 business owners. They want a streetscape of Chicago Drive. Chicago Drive is a major thoroughfare. At that time, it was 2 lanes going in each direction. Sidewalks were very narrow. Businesses didn't even unlock their front doors. So these business owners wanted a streetscape. They wanted more pedestrian safety. So that became my project. I worked with the DDA to do that project. It was really a divisive project. About half the community wanted it. The other half didn't want anything to do with it. I had one council member banging his desk, kind of like Nikita Khrushchev with a shoe, saying he wouldn't spend one red cent on this project. So I worked with the DDA. The DDA was a downtown development authority. I don't think the township has a downtown development authority. It was a little militant towards the city council, and I was kind of stuck between the two of them. I'd meet with the DDA in the council chambers, and they'd want to put great big maps on the wall. I'm like, this, and this belongs to the city council. This is people. It's not just your space. If you want a project, don't do it by ticking other people off. You got to work with them. So eventually we did FAQs. We sent out newsletters. Some of the more vocal supporters, we brought in a radio station and they did radio ads. We held events. handed out flyers, did surveys, did as much as we could to educate the public on what a streetscape really is. It's a traffic calming, right? Did I really care if someone's in Georgetown Township and they want to go to Wyoming, that they got to slow down? They should slow down. We don't need them doing 50 miles an hour through our downtown. So that took 6 years until we finally got the city council to approve that project. It was a $5 million project. I secured $1 million grant, traffic safety grant through MDOT. That time, that was the largest grant they had issued for that project. And it's really turned our downtown around. The next step after we completed the infrastructure side of things was to start holding events to bring more people downtown. That's where we are currently.
Thank you for sharing that.
What is your role, or as a manager, what do you see the manager's role in strategic planning?
So we have, operational maintenance needs. Any local government will have that. It's my role to bring those things to you in that conversation to say, okay, the Motley Center, for example, conversation the other night, that these are the needs in your conversation. Remember these things, and then make sure those are incorporated into that plan. Like the open line of communication to make sure you're understanding from an operational maintenance side that you may, be good on the policy side, right? That you're elected to adopt the policies for us to run the township. But again, making sure that those operational and maintenance items are included in those plans. And I'm also responsible for implementing that plan, right? Again, that's why we have the spreadsheet we use to make sure that those plans are being implemented and give you feedback as we go through that.
Just a clarifying question. For the story that you talked about, the streetscape, my sense is that that project outlived a few members of your board. How did you keep that momentum going with new people on the board?
It was storytelling, right? Is what you do often as a leader is you tell stories. We have new members, we bring them in. This is what we have going on. This is why the project is important to the downtown. We had one new council member who was very supportive of the downtown businesses, as he should have been. So the night before the vote, or actually the afternoon of the vote, he came in my office, had a lot of questions, and I sat him down. I answered all his questions. This is why it's important. He goes, but I support the downtown businesses. I said, absolutely, you should. And this does support the downtown businesses. They're asking for it. He goes, okay, that sounds great. He got my vote. Well, he voted against it because he supported the downtown businesses. It's about storytelling and keeping that story alive, either in your strategic plans, and that orientation that I described. When it's either a board member or you got planning commission member or something like that, to make sure those are all priorities.
If I can follow, what you just described is what we're trying to understand who the face of the township is, because some of the projects are so long-term that it takes a manager to carry the flag of the project. For instance, look outside this particular building, you have a park that will take 10 to 15 years to develop. And so it takes that manager to carry that flag through multiple boards. And so that's what we're trying to discern. And I appreciate you telling the story about storytelling, because we need to keep on telling stories about projects that outlive boards.
It's important either on the website or here at Township Hall to have maps, right? This is our vision for this area and what we want to accomplish. So maybe it's someone who's not actively running for the board. Maybe it's somebody who's going to run for the board in 6 years. Mm-hmm. That they see that and say, hey, that's a cool idea. Maybe have some input. Or maybe I totally oppose that project. Maybe I think it's the worst thing ever. And that's why I'm going to run for board. But at least you're communicating your dreams.
Yeah. Thank you.
Matt, can you describe a major accomplishment you were directly involved in within your current and most recent position?
I work with a lot of projects. The more recent one was when we did the streetscape project. Part of that was we're gonna build a farmer's market pavilion, but it got cut out for budgetary reasons. It's just too expensive. So after we had this streetscape finished, we've gotten into the events, but we need event space. So we built the farmer's market pavilion. That was my project. It was very complicated. It was over on a former street right away. And there were utilities and things that we didn't realize were still underground. We had an excavator hit a live electric line, which shut down the project for a significant period of time. That was a bonded project like the streetscape. And that's really it's in a parking, it was in the middle of a parking lot next to the library, and it's really turned into an amazing community space. We have a farmer's market there. We have a summer music series down there. We built a music garden for children so that they can bang on things that's going to make all kinds of noise. Great big steel swings for families to sit on, big rocks for kids to climb. It's just really turned into an active space for the public to use, and very proud of that one.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
So being the manager has a number of different facets. We have the staff here, we have the board here, we've got community around us.
Yep.
How do you, I'm gonna leave you in this, but how do you accomplish all those things? What does your day look like? What are the hours look like? Are you a part of this community, or are you community with the community? How do you make that work? Trying to touch all the facets of it and do it in a way that enables everybody to be successful.
I'll start with how my day typically works. Starts with coffee. First thing, I'm at the Keurig machine, filling up my cup. Then I go typically right into emails. And then typically by the time I'm in my emails, department heads start to filter in. If it's something urgent, they probably overnight, there's a structure fire. They've already let us know. They've already sent us text or called us to let us know what's going on. So it's emails, it's communicating with department heads. If there is something that needs to get pushed up to the council, we'll certainly do that as soon as we can. Question about commuting, I do intend to commute for the foreseeable future. I still got kids in school. If I am hired here, I could see us downsizing here eventually. Let the kids graduate. House is almost paid off, so I'd like to pay off a house before I think about buying something new. Just dropped a lot of money in a new kitchen for my wife. I want her to be able to enjoy that for a while. But I could be part of this community and still commute. I could, in Greenville, I was there for 6.5 years, and I commuted. I commuted my first year in Granville, and I was every part of both those communities when I was doing that.
Thank you.
How do you contribute to a positive collaborative work culture?
By nature, one of my mentors, 30 years in the military, instead of being very authoritative, he's very positive. And going through cancer, that really rubbed off at me. Understanding that I'm in an infusion room getting chemo, and that poor guy sitting across from me, he's having a harder day than I am. I'm having a good day. I look at it when I wake up in the morning. If I wake up, yeah, I'm having a great day. Now, some days are harder than others, but I'm a positive person. I like to use my sense of humor, especially with staff. I was joking with Bill. Those weren't laughs you heard back there. Those were all screams. But I'm collaborative. You'll find me wandering through departments during one thing I can't do is I can't sit very long. I think the best when I'm walking around thinking, talking to people. That's kind of like a release for me. So I may work in my office for a couple hours, then I'll be in the clerk's office asking them what they're doing, if I can help. If clerks are running an election, they're busy, and we got a council packet going out. If I got a few minutes, I'll make copies for them. I'm not below that. Again, it's going back to that servant leadership idea of putting myself in a position to help them with whatever that may be. Stuffing envelopes, sure, why not? If I got time. If I have other issues going on, I'm sorry, I can't do it today, but if I gotta talk to the police chief, I won't call him. I'll wander over to his office and I may run into Officer Musin and say, hey, ask him about, how his daughters are doing, how's his wife doing? Just gives that one-on-one connection with the employees. And that just establishes, builds that relationship we have.
But yeah, it's a follow-up question on that. We're hiring in some sense, the face of the township. It seems like the programs that you described earlier and throughout this last half hour have had a lot of collaborative aspects of it. Could you explain a little bit of your energy outside the office to get some of these things done? Because we as alluded to earlier, we're a bedroom community that has to, we have services provided in partnership. Can you elaborate a little bit more about the outside the office attitude you have?
Sure. So in the Grand Rapids metro area, we have something called Metro 6. It started out called ALMA, Urban Metro Managers. 6 core cities would meet on an annual basis, or not annual, sorry, on a monthly basis. It first started because we had an issue with the jail per diems that the county was charging. Then how do we work together to overcome that? But we still meet once a month. We're all friends. We call each other often, shoot each other emails, bounce things off each other. So we use that as a huge tool in West Michigan, in the metro area to work together. Again, for instance, the 28th Street has the Metro Cruise every August, which is a huge event, which I got tied into it this year because my youngest son loves cars. Didn't get that gene from me at all. So he had me driving up and down 28th Street during the middle of this nightmare. But it draws tens and tens of thousands of people.
Our car guy might ask you a follow-up question.
You should talk to 12-year-olds. I'm gonna let speed dial for you. That's a great example. Huge event, and it takes cooperation amongst many communities to pull that off. Wyoming decided that they're going to start charging special permit fees to cover things like fire and police cost. So they came to us and wanted to move the event to our city. We're like, we just adopted a policy. We're doing the same. So happy to help Wyoming, but it's about those relationships, Steve. It's about trusting each other and making sure that, again, if Walker or Wyoming needs something, that we're there to help.
Our community event would be arguably the tulip time.
Exactly.
Holland can't do it without us because we have resources, parks, places that host things during tulip time. So very simple. Let's see. I don't know where I'm at.
The manager position requires you to respond to many requests in a short period of time. How do you ensure promptness, accuracy, and courtesy under these conditions? And what specifically would you do?
It often depends on the issue, the immediacy of the issue. Again, I often will joke that I start my day with a cup of coffee, but it really starts with the first flyer that you have to put out. And sometimes you get the regulars coming in that you can joke around with, you get to know them. We have one guy, he's on one of our boards, and he comes in to remind me that, he pays my taxes all the time, or pays my salary. Little guy, I can push back and we can have conversations and have fun. But when issues come across, it's my job to make sure they're being resolved and making sure they're getting funneled to whatever department's going to address that. If it's someone complaining about there's a junk car sitting on this lot, it's been there for a month. All right, then I'm going to push that complaint down to community development and ask them to address it as soon as possible and to report back. If it's someone's in a restaurant and they notice an issue that they think it's gonna be a fire code issue, okay, then that, you know, the chief would be my call to say, hey, can you look into this? It's just delegating. That's really what it comes down to.
Okay. As you know, the manager as well as the supervisor are the faces of the community or to the community. What is your experience with communication, PR releases, comments to the press, both printed as well as live TV?
Sure. They have pretty extensive experience with interviews, creating press releases. Some of our departments are better at that than others. Are like our police department, they're trained on how to put out a release, right? But with the reporters, it's about establishing those relationships with them, never going off record with them, but also feeding them stories. Fox 17, for example, they have a new program out where they have reporters in the neighborhoods, right? So we have one, and we're making sure we're feeding her stories that she can use. Makes her job easier, but also make sure that our stories being told the right way. We get calls from news channels saying, hey, there's a story. We go around and run with it, and we get you in front of the camera. Some days I'm like, you know what, I'm too busy. I'm happy to give you a statement. Other days is like, yeah, come on over. Let's get this done. It's about building those relationships with them.
But you've done that directly.
Oh, absolutely.
As a follow-up, I was going to ask this question anyways, but just, we have 2 significant millage renewals coming up this year. As you heard the other night, it is part of our strategic plan to communicate positively on both issues prior to the millages. And so there's a fine line of what we can say and can't say. But have you had experience in evaluating millage renewals and the right rate? You know, because both millages will outlive the term of this board.
Sure.
But also, being a fiscally conservative area, we need to prove our case every time we go for a millage renewal. Have you had experience with that?
Not exactly. We have one millage in Granville. We don't have any special millages.
That's true.
We're well below
Yeah.
Headley. Headley's 18 mills and we're at 12.55. So we have a lot of room, and the council may adjust that. They adjusted it 2 years ago to start dumping a lot of money to roads. And once that 5-year project is done, then they're going to lower that back down. But as a manager, I'm not necessarily the cheerleader for a millage increase, but I am the facts, right? As elected officials, you'd be the cheerleaders for that. I'd be the one who would be sitting down with people to explain, these are the things that can be done. This is the reason behind it. This is the factual information. I think that's the line you have to, you know, as a member of the ICMA, I'm ethically, you know, obliged to stay out of politics, right? Sometimes you get dragged in kicking and screaming, but as the elected officials, the cheerleading is on your side. It's my job to make sure the message and the story is being told.
Sure. Well, and also, I think the part that you need to empower the board, this elected official group here, with the right facts, because if we under millage, it's not the right word, but if our millage is not sufficient to cover the cost of the fire safety millage, we do a disservice to our community for not providing, you know, 5-minute response. You know, if we can, you know, respond to a person at midnight, you know, 3 or 4 years or whatever the time might be, and the money's not there to do that, this board is doing a disservice to our residents. But we lean on you and the chief, or you and the team, the staff, to provide that right information to us. Because these are milestones in our calendar that we take very seriously.
And that's part of the start of the budget process, right? What are the needs? What are the wants?
Yeah.
We know this is going to expire at the end of the year. This is the need we have in our parks. Is the want maybe to put up a new playground? Or maybe we don't need a playground, but we need lighting, or we need a bicycle repair station.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Sure. Okay, thank you. All right.
Earlier you mentioned projects that were bonded.
Yeah.
Since I've been on the board, we've never done a bond. Are you familiar with the process and how to get it done and that type of thing? And what project was it that was bonded?
We've bonded a number of projects, the streetscape that I was directly involved with, the farmer's market. We're bonding right now for a number of water projects. We're on the Wyoming water system. They're putting the third line in, but we also have much of our water infrastructure needs to be improved. So over the next several years, we're going to be spending a lot of money in water. That's a bonded project. The process, you were working with a bond counsel. You work with setting the it's the notice of resolution. It's the bond notice that basically sets a 45-day window for a referendum, which leads to the next step. Because we're under our head lien Granville, to pay for the bond, if we have to increase the millage, the council will just make that decision. There's no special vote that would have to happen for that. But we do bond a number of projects. They really lean on our bond counsel to get us through those, and it's always eye-opening to go through that process. But yeah, we do have experience. I have direct experience on my own projects working on that.
Good, thanks.
To tie in with that question, do you have experience in grants? And if you can explain a couple of grants that you've applied and have been successful in succeeding?
Sure. I talked about the transportation enhancement grant I obtained for the streetscape, the $1 million one. I've written a number of grants for parks and trails through the Michigan DNR Natural Resource Trust Fund. In Greenville, Lake Park Township, lots of trails, and those were all funded with both donations from Meyer. Greenville is a hometown of Meyer. They love trails, but we also funded the other part with grants. So I wrote those grants. Also, in Granville, we get a little bit of community development grants. That's changed over the years how those get allocated. I just got a $300,000 grant for a pocket park. That is a project I'm working on currently.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
I mean, if you look at our vision statement, we are family friendly first.
Yep.
And not that we're business adverse, but not at the sake of family. So I think in that there are going to be things that come up where you might have one perspective, the board might have another perspective. How do you reconcile that? How do you reconcile your own? And I'm not saying that there would be an issue around that, but just in general, how do you reconcile your thoughts, beliefs with maybe a board direction that might go against what your thoughts or beliefs are?
Sure. At the end of the day, whatever decision you make is the decision that gets implemented. I may bring you a recommendation. I've worked with a manager who always was telling the council what they need to do, right, in Greenville. This is what you're going to do. In Granville, we take the opposite approach. We give the board as much information as we can to help them make that decision. And some issues are maybe more technical, we'll have a recommendation for them. But at the end of the day, if you make a recommendation to go, or if you make a decision to go one way, and maybe I don't personally agree with it professionally or otherwise, that's tough for me. I still got to do my job, and I got to make sure that's being addressed and taken care of.
Have you had situations like that where you've had to kind of bridge that gap?
Yes. I think in our breakfast meeting, I talked about chickens. So we started getting a number of complaints about chickens in Granville. Granville's a built-up community, very suburban. So I drafted a ordinance to address chickens, to restrict the number. I think it was to a dozen, not allow roosters, have a required amount of space they need to be kept in with a shelter. They got to be kept so far from our property line. Basic stuff. Nothing outlandish. We weren't trying to prohibit them. We just wanted some basic things to address chickens. We're getting a lot of calls about the roosters, so no roosters. We had a handful of folks in Granville that were huge chicken supporters, and they showed up in force when that ordinance was being proposed. And the council decided we didn't need that ordinance adopted. So they didn't adopt it.
They chickened out.
They chickened out. Well, just hanging out. Come on.
Sorry.
So we have a few, we have a family that has 700 chickens. 700 chickens. And so we're working through that. Prosecutors concerned about the right to farm. We're using some other tools to get them to get rid of the chickens, such as they had a mobile home on the property, which the court had ordered them to remove. Well, what they do is what we found this when we did our administrative search warrant, which is the second one I've done in my career, is they took the mobile home frame and turned it into a giant chicken coop. So we're using that as a tool to get rid of the mobile home, which gets rid of the chicken coop, which hopefully gets rid of the 700 chickens. So, yes, the chicken ordinance is a great idea.
Thank you.
I'm going to go free form for a moment. Is there questions or areas that you'd like to ask Matthew that we haven't touched on? I don't want to go down the line, but is there anything that is an open issue? Then after those questions, I'd like to ask Matthew if he has anything for us. We're heading towards the 11:45-ish is about we're at 11:40-ish. So any questions that are pressing that haven't been addressed? Sure, please.
I've got one. So short-term rentals is a huge topic here. Just curious as to your experience with litigation, courts, and you may know now that as of this week, we've had a federal case filed against us. So just want to know a little bit about your background with that.
We've been involved in a number of lawsuits. I've had to testify, and before had my own plan review be used against the city in a hotel that was denied because the neighbors didn't like it. It met all of our requirements to the T. And against my recommendation, the planning commission denied it. The developer sued us. Again, my review is used as evidence against the city. And the judge very quickly sided with the developer and ordered us to approve that at our next planning commission meeting. Got to the planning commission. I told the planning commission what had occurred. These are the orders from the judge to approve this. And the chair stood up, quit, and walked out the door. Because he was opposed to it. Had to testify over billboard issues in a state administrative court. We had a federal lawsuit over billboards again with our zoning ordinance being content based. So yeah, lots of experience dealing with attorneys. Sometimes I judge my day by how many attorneys I talk to. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Fewer is better, please. Any other questions before he asks us? All right, Matthew, Matt, what do you have for us in the last 7-8 minutes?
Sure. So what personality traits or attributes do you think would not make good management material?
I'll lean towards my colleague who's experienced.
Arrogance doesn't make for a good manager.
Yeah, I would, the ability to listen well is a attribute that if is critical. And when we aren't listening to each other and the manager's not listening to us and vice versa, there is tension in the system.
I think common sense is something I really look for, down to earth. We've had some headstrong managers in the past. I think they're very difficult to work with. So I like an even keel, common sense type of person.
Good communication was a long way. Some of our past managers, we would go months without it, even we wouldn't know what was going on. So good communication.
Yep.
I'll piggyback on that, since Bill's been here and I know he's walking out the door right now, but my compliment to him is, I absolutely love his weekly reports to us, letting us know what's going on. Extremely important. And I know your question was what attributes we wouldn't care for, and we're all giving you what we want.
Bill has reset our expectation as to what a good manager can look like. And I'll second that. The manager report we got this last week was just, it's brief, it's concise,
Yeah.
I mean, you spend, what, 2 minutes reading something?
If that, and you know it all.
And you know everything, the issues that are going on in that communication skill. So lack of communication, dictatorial, manipulative. I think there's a number of times where I think we all felt like we were being manipulated by a lack of information, and then the decision needs to be made. Those will not, I mean, and I think part of it is because Bill has shown us that we don't have to tolerate that, we're not going to.
Yep. Joan?
I'll say, in the positive side, a balance between managing and leading. I mean, you want to always lead, but there's that balance, and there's a difference between two.
Great. Yeah. The last question, Billy, your presence is telling me that we were almost done. Okay, good. Matt, yeah.
So, if I'm given the opportunity and I am hired here, and the first 30, 60, 90, 1 year, I mean, what kind of, I understand that I read the article and heard the conversation the other night about the short-term rental lawsuit, but what other obstacles would I be addressing immediately and in the short term?
I think for me is what to do with the Coast Guard building and property. It's a valuable piece of property, and how we live within our means to use that will be a challenge for the board.
Yeah. I would like to piggyback on what Lauren said earlier. The fire safety, marine health, the emergency services will continually be a challenge for us as we take on more and more responsibility for protecting and serving our residents. And so, is it where it should be? Don't know. Is it where it will be? It's not. I just think that would be a continual financial and managerial challenge over the next couple decades. And I just think we have to be fully aware that service will not diminish. And so I think that's going to be a challenge for us. Lauren, you're nodding, would you agree or not?
Oh, I agree, 100%.
Yeah.
Especially with summer coming, the numbers always double in the summertime.
Yeah, yeah.
So in addition to the Coast Guard station, looking around, I mean, we just had a meeting at the Mottman Center. I think moving forward, and it's not going to be within 30, 60, 90, but it's going to be within the next year, looking at all of our facilities and the state that they are in, and putting a plan together for either maintenance improvements or maintaining good facilities, so that 10 years down the road, we're not having to take a building down and rebuild that.
It's cheaper to do sooner than later.
Correct.
thing to add to that, right? We have an aging infrastructure, have a desire for new infrastructure. How do we balance those things out? How do we communicate that to our township to understand that's the next year, over the next decade, what's that look like?
Do you hold open houses often, newsletters, those type of, other than just the website, social media, to get those messages out there?
What we've done in the past is not what we have to do more in the future. I think that's where the next manager is going to have to lead us more appropriately in that.
And to answer part of that, we do have a newsletter, and maybe Jan can speak to this better than I can, but it goes out with our taxes. So is it just twice a year, or do we quarterly?
Twice a year, we have a big newsletter go out, and then we have weekly or bi-weekly on our website.
Okay.
Newsletters go out.
We can do better. Yeah. No?
I think one of our biggest challenges is going to be growth. And how do we manage that? How do we manage it? We've got a lot of property here, blueberry farms. A lot of people want to develop those areas. So how do we maintain that? How do we maintain the face of Park Township as we've been in the past, but yet still live in the future?
It starts with master planning and identifying exactly what you want and striking that balance.
Yeah. I think this board has to work more collaboratively with the planning commission to understand. They just finished up a master plan a couple of years ago, but I would argue that we probably aren't quite as collaborative on many of the fine issues they brought up in the master planning process. So this year would be a collaboration. I think one of the challenges that in 2026 is really establishing a planning system that engages the staff, community, and the board. And I just think that that's a priority for me, is that the legacy that this board can leave is after 3 years that we have an established planning system that drives the budget, but also reflects the 3, 5, 10, 15-year goals. So that, when we talk about capital improvements, we know where our capital is going for the next 3 to 5 years because we have a plan that we're working towards. So I say 2026 is a planning year for this board and for the new manager.
All the questions I have. I appreciate this opportunity. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for throwing your name in the hat. It's always a risky thing to do publicly. Yeah. And I just thank you for your willingness to come, engage. Bill, thank you for working with us to interview for the job. We have had a wonderful conversation this morning, jabbering with a couple teammates. They had a wonderful conversation in the staff area in the room next door. So thank you for sharing yourself. And we're going to have lunch, and this is a hard decision. So this is kind of a fun to have a hard decision. It sounds weird. It's fun to have a hard decision, but I think I just want to say thank you for what you do for your community, Granville. I've learned a lot about your community today, but also in conversations. So I'll drive through your community in a different way.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So,
well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You've been very gracious, Steve, and you've been very gracious as well as the selection committee.
Yeah.
So again, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
go. Second. All right, hey, put your microphones on.
And we're back in session. Thank you for a delightful morning, and the candidates will probably watch this. Thank you to the two candidates that put themselves out there for Park Township manager. And so two delightful candidates, Allison Nugent and Matt Butts, both impressed the entire teams, both teams, internal and the board, staff and the board. So thank you to them. And so now we have the challenge of selecting the candidate. But before that, what I'd like to do is ask the staff representative to give us an update about what they learned about our two candidates.
Staff really appreciates having the opportunity to really sit down for a while with both of the candidates and talk to them, go through some questions that we had. We really enjoyed talking to both of the candidates, and the consensus in the room was that, you know, we wouldn't feel really bad about either one. In fact, we think that either one of them could do a good job in Park Township, and that we could work with either one of them. So we look at either decision as something that would say, oh, this is not going to be a good thing. We saw some pros and cons with the different candidates, and at the end I'll kind of say there was a defined direction that staff as a whole had leaned. We talked to Matt first. We really appreciated that he had a very grounded and stable presence, brings a lot of depth of experience, a lot of years of experience in the job. Appreciated that he had, it seems like when it came to the project planning and the way that worked through the organization, that was a very clear response that we got, that seemed like it was a strength. There was some, I think, concern about status quo, whether this would be moving things forward a lot, or if it would be more, just kind of taking things as they are and building quietly. There was a little bit of desire to, you know, keep getting things done, and it wasn't clear if that was something that would come through with that candidate as well. And, you know, how much would they be in the community? We had some conversations about what level of desirability that is. What role should the manager play as far as being in the community, as opposed to various staff members? So we did talk about that a little bit. We talked to Allison. Oh, and then well, no, I'll do that at the end. Sorry. We talked to Allison next. And I think one of the things that came out quite a bit for staff was that she gave the impression of being a relationship builder more, both with staff and then also with outside organizations. One of the things that staff saw as a strength was that she's coming from a township environment where we have our own fire, but we don't have our own police, we don't control our own roads, and so we're working with a lot of outside entities on that. She also had some experience in water system management, and that's something that, since we interact with that a lot, and we've had some change in that department, that's a challenge that we're looking at, and so that experience we thought might be valuable. And I think we saw in general a more proactive stance and potentially more flexibility in approaching things on that end. So really enjoyed talking to both the candidates. Staff on the whole leaned decisively towards Allison as a candidate, but also said both would be good to work with and didn't have strong reservations about working with Matt.
Any questions for Mika or the team?
Did you have any concerns with Allison at all?
I think it was maybe she had a lot of energy, and that was appreciated. Well, that was one of the things that we liked. It was also something that we looked at and said, how does that energy reflect in the office? You know, is it going to turn out in real life? Is that, as you're, you know, go doing projects, is that going to turn out to be a positive, like moving things forward energy? Or is it going to be a different kind of energy? And so I think that was one of the questions that we had. And then she has a little bit, the depth of experience is a little bit less. And so, you know, obviously, you haven't encountered as many challenges over, you know, 6 or 8 years as you have over a couple decades. So.
Any other questions? Any comments from the staff that Mika did cover or want to emphasize?
Just real quick, jumping back just for a second, do you think one would be easier or harder than work with? Do you think both? I mean, I know both candidates are great. You get a feel for if you had to solve a problem, who do you want to solve a problem with?
I think you might get different answers on that from different staff members. On the whole, the staff was leaning more towards Allison, but I could see sitting down to kind of talk through a situation. I think that Matt would do very well at looking at, you know, what the different obstacles and things like that could be as well.
Another question. Did you get a feel for what people thought the best fit would be for our township, considering Park Township? Who would be the best fit?
We didn't talk about that specifically as far as best fit would go. You know, I can just generally say that was that the leaning was on the Allison side as far as overall fit goes. But I do think that there are going to be areas where this is a soft answer, so I apologize for it, because I think there will be areas where one is going to be stronger than the other. And I think it partly depends on what Park Township and what you are looking for Park Township to be in the next 5 years and what your priorities are. What types of projects are you looking at? How fast do you want to move? What is it that you're looking for Park Township to be over the next, 5 or 10 years?
Question as it relates to the financial acumen of each candidate. Allison is a little lighter on the township financial experience, although she is in charge and has to put the budget together. Matt has done, years of financial activities, it sounds like. Is there an inclination about either one being a better fit in the financial area than the other?
I think that I would want Connie to speak about that more specifically if you wanted to go to do a deep dive into that. I think, we also noted that she was lighter on that, but.
Connie, would you be willing?
Sorry,
Yeah,
Connie.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, I just. Yeah.
Well, we didn't really get into the finance piece very much with Matt. It didn't come up a whole lot. I didn't get the impression that he was especially hands-on, which is fine. But I'm certain he's knowledgeable given the depth of experience he has.
And Allison?
I think that she's learned a lot, and I think that there's opportunities for additional mentoring, I guess that would be the right word.
Okay.
But I don't have reservations about either of them in that regard.
Okay. So again.
Not helpful, I know.
Not helpful. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, no, that's good. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a miss that we're not picking out the red flag. All right.
So,
anything else, please?
One thing Al just reminded me of is that Allison did talk a lot about grants, that she had done quite a bit of grant writing in the past. So we didn't ask Matt about that. I can't say yay or nay on that, but she did say that she had done quite a bit of grant writing.
During our interview, Sharp did ask about grants to Matt. So, and he did affirm that he has done some. A lot, actually.
So my only question is, they'd had two different totally interview styles. So are the warm fuzzies on personality or are the warm fuzzies on skills that were presented and can be defined?
Am I being interviewed?
No, you weren't.
I think it was, there's such different candidates. And I think that's what the challenge is. I don't know if I would say that the warm fuzzies were based on personality. I think that it was more how are you've got two people with existing skill sets and developing skill sets, and how's that going to fit here and into the township? And I think that maybe the more limited skill set, the smaller, and I don't know if that's an accurate portrayal, but Allison had a shorter period of time that she's done this work, but that could also lean towards a little bit more of a drive towards learning and towards doing and towards expanding that skill set. That may be there with Matt as well. And like we said before, we don't have reservations about either candidate, but that was one of the questions was, we see that there's a lot of skill here. There's a lot of depth of experience. Is that static, or is that something that's going to continue to grow and to expand within the township? And especially, there's going to be a natural growth and expansion because coming from a city environment to a township environment, you don't have the same structure, and that's a different thing. So I think that's more where that landed.
Thank you for that.
Any other comments or questions? All right, I just want to say thank you to our staff for taking a Saturday morning to lean into this challenging, exciting decision. And yeah, okay. At this point, let's banter on the two candidates. Let's not select a candidate right now. Let's talk about each of them individually for a moment, and to say, just like Mika did, what are the positives that you saw? What are the concerns you might have on each of the candidates? So we kind of understand where we might be. So, anyone want to start?
I struggled like staff did, actually. It's granted there were two different interview styles, but through the questions we asked, as an engineer, I'm data driven. So I was really trying to pull examples of work done and what the individual can do for our township. I wish I could weigh. I mean, we've got one with so much experience and one just coming up with experience. It's hard. It's going to be a hard decision.
Is there anything that stood out for you, Shar, from your engineering perspective that kind of said, you know what, that was a aha moment from your perspective?
Aha moment, but the depth of experience for me resonates a little bit more with Matt in that, well, let me back up a little bit. I think we didn't ask the exact same questions to each candidate. We kind of floated around a little bit, and a lot were similar, but not exact. So one example was with grants, and I know our staff didn't ask Matt about grants, but I did. And I think as our board and what we have strived to set for our future, getting money for grants, managing our residents, communication, I mean, they both had those good traits. But first, Matt just stuck out a little bit more for me is all. And I can add more as more people chime in with some other points of view.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bear with me because I'm still trying to put my thoughts together around that. Bear with me, I'm still trying to put my thoughts together around
It's Venn diagrams.
Yeah. I think we'll all agree, both candidates are great candidates.
Yes.
I don't think there's any question about that. I think the bigger question is which one best fits our township, which one best fits quote unquote our needs. I think when we consider who we are as a township, we are as the mission statement clearly points out, right? We're family friendly, we are centered, we are family centric. We're not business centric, we're not providers of all kinds of services. We are a family centric township that is, for all intent and purpose, users of the township services and support around us. We do, and I think we do a phenomenal job on the safety side of things. And I think that we're going to have to continue to do that as evidence right now. So I think it's really, really important to look at this from the lens of who we are and who best fits that. I think, you know, given that quote unquote lens, I think it's super important for us to have a manager who is very relationship based. Because we aren't in a position where we're going to dictate to those around us. We're going to have to try to build a relationship with them, and we're going to have to figure out how we're going to collaborate with them. We're going to have to figure out how to do things. And I don't think that fits the model of this is the way we've done it for the last 15 years. And so we're just going to go ahead and do it that same way for the next 15 years. And I think when you consider all those things, and for me, I think Allison's a better candidate because I think she has the ability to be more adaptive in those kind of conversations and in those kinds of situations than I see Matt. I think Matt's got a tremendous amount of experience. I almost wonder if some of that experience would make him less effective in our township because of the relationships and because of he needs to think he's gonna have to think outside or very differently than how he has thought in the past. And so I think based on those things, my gut goes with Allison.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
I'll just put in my comments, both very well qualified. I see it as two sides of the board. I don't want to say this is a bad thing. You had mentioned Matt was stable. I'm wondering if Matt would be stale. I've been here a long time, seen different managers, and I wonder if he's comfortable in his role. I see Allison as vibrant. I think, and just seeing the turnover in our staff over the last few years and the younger ideas that are coming in, the fresh ideas that are coming in, we're changing. I'm impressed with, the younger people coming in with their new ideas, their new ways of doing stuff. And I see Allison as bringing that in. And I think what she really impressed me with, she's a team player. It's not me, it's us. And I was impressed with that.
Joan or Lauren?
Yeah, it is a difficult decision. It's, Matt does bring a lot of experience. The thing that I liked about Matt was he has a lot of experience with litigations and everything like we're going through with the SDRs, and he had a lot of experience with all the items he brought up there. I don't think Allison had much experience with that type, but I don't have my mind made up. I don't know. It's a tough decision.
Emma or Joan?
Well, when I initially looked at the resumes, I was torn. I mean, it's the same thing. You've got two people on each side of the spectrum, and but I think it comes back to what is the fit here in our community and which one is going to lead us for the future. I like the background that Matt has, the experience in just a lot of different ways, a lot of experience there. Status quo, maybe, but maybe we need that stability. Our last 8 years haven't been real stable. With Allison, great energy. I loved her ideas and that sort of thing. My biggest concern with Allison is, will she outgrow the position very quickly? And how long will she be here? Now, the question is, maybe we just need her for a couple years, but the question is, will she outgrow it and be ready to move on? I don't know. But she brings great strengths as well. When I look at our community, I think one of the biggest issues that we have is controlling the growth. Everybody wants to move here. I hear it every day. oh, I'm looking at this area, I want to move to Holland. But when they move to Holland, a lot of them want to move to Park Township. How do we control that growth? And my feeling is that, I guess my initial feeling is that Matt would probably be a little bit better in helping us to manage everything around us.
Jim?
Guess it's my turn.
Yeah.
You know, it's, one of the big things with me is just the experience. This guy's been around Matt's been around for a long time and brings, his experience that, Allison doesn't have. You all saw the energy. I heard that she had a lot of energy. I didn't see a lot of energy in the interview. And I didn't get a chance to talk with her afterwards. I'm sure she has a lot of energy. I believe the township needs more stability than energy. I think Matt, in what he has accomplished, proves that he can communicate and get things done. I do have concerns, as Joan said, about how long Allison will be here. She's leaving her current, or considering leaving her current place because of what she doesn't like. My concern is she's going to find something here that she doesn't like and consider going somewhere else. Or, as Joan said, this will be a stepping stone for her. Whereas with Matt, I don't think this will be a stepping stone. I think this is a place where he wants stability, or he wants an opportunity to prove that he's not just an assistant, but that he's going to develop. This, I believe, will be his legacy if he has the opportunity to stay here, which I do think he would. Yeah, you know, as far as his commitment to move things forward, I don't think there's any doubt. I think, and this is one of the things I said earlier about managers in general. I think the board determines where we go from here, and he's proven he can get things done. Allison has as well. I just like the experience. I want someone that doesn't have to ramp up on things. So that's my opinion.
Can I butt in again?
Please, go ahead.
It was interesting, both candidates would be commuting and not living in our community, which kind of surprised me. Understandably, 100% understandable with families and children still in school and not uprooting that environment for the children. Totally understand that, but I just found it interesting that both candidates would be commuting into the community.
I don't want to make the assumption, but all 5 finalists would be doing the same thing. There wasn't any bill. If you reflect on those 5, they were all other living elsewhere.
Yeah, they wouldn't be moving right away if they moved it all.
If not, yep.
Yeah, that was just very interesting to me. I guess in my vision, I didn't expect that. So there's nothing good or bad about it. It's just interesting in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad I heard my colleagues doing a little tally here, and we got a hung jury so far. So, so this is not getting any easier. The questions I had in what I asked both teammates is really a planning focus. And Allison, I had a conversation where her offline earlier this week, just on that specific question, and she impressed me and energized me about the board planning. On the other hand, Matthew had communicated again about his ability to communicate plans both visually, but also on a regular basis to his board and to his staff. And so both are great candidates on the planning side. I thought there was an edge there, but I think they're both equal. I don't want to sound like I'm flip flopping, but I have this interesting dilemma. That in some sense, a safe choice with the experience load is Matthew. And I reflect back on, Jim, Brian, and I, and Bill had breakfast with him 2 weeks ago as an introductory conversation. And we both, all three of us, no quorum, all three of us were very impressed with him immediately. And he did nothing today to disappoint me that would cause me concern. So I reflect back, where's my wave of emotion right now? And I think Allison interviews a bit better than Matt. Has some good energy, and I might have been swayed by a little bit of her pleasant demeanor. I can't get out of my mind that when I asked a colleague in Holland about this candidate, Matt, he was quick to affirm this would be his choice. And he's a well-respected city manager at Holland. And he, without hesitation, said this would be the person I recommend. And so I look at the inside outside, and I have confidence that Matt looks at this job with a bit longer time frame than Allison. I think. Again, I can't get into Allison's mind, but I have a sense that he's not moving from 19 years at Granville to come to Park Township on a whim. This is a big commitment for him. And so now, do we want? He will probably self-admit he's not the flashiest guy, but also I think Joan, you asked him about PR, and he's willing to get on TV. I'm going like, it has been. I'm going like, interesting. So I have Lauren. I'm with you. I flip flop back and forth this whole couple weeks, and today in this moment. Hearing my colleagues and respecting all of us, in our different perspectives, I'm leaning towards Matt. And again, there's not a bad choice. I mean, why am I feeling bad? I feel bad. Oh, I'm turning down the L.
It would be nice to have co-managers.
So anyway, so that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, and so. Comments, questions, and we all just talked once. This banter back. Is there any clarifying? You said an interesting thing, earlier about Allison brings some fresh energy, possibly to a different perspective. I mean, I that's an interesting perspective. Yes, but on the other hand, Matt is willing to take all its experience and bring it to Park Township. Interesting perspective too. I mean, Jim. I mean, I have to believe that if you're hiring a new doctor in your practice, you like to have the doctor who's delivered quite a few babies. It's helpful. It's helpful. I can see your perspective. I mean, and so I think I can sense, both candidates being good, but I'm tipping right now towards Matt. Just hearing you talk, Lauren. After hearing us talk, are you tipping in any way?
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning more towards Matt as I hear the conversation.
Can you just share that you have worked with the Granville City for a long period of time? Can you just share what your experience has been?
I can. Matt has been with the city of Granville for 18 years, and I've been in my job for 22 years. So I've known Matt the whole time, and we report to Matt directly. And I can tell you the entire city loves the man. And if he does leave, there's going to be some sad faces there. He's very, very respected in the city of Granville. He's a well-liked gentleman there.
Yeah. I think that's important for our board to hear that as well. Thank you, Lauren. All right. Any comments mean, if I look at this, Brian and Jan, any questions or comments for your colleagues on this one?
No, I think it's, as a board, we need to decide as a whole who we're gonna hire, what direction we want to go.
Mhm.
So I respect that.
Yeah. Yes, please, be the wise sage for us. Can you, no, the wise sage speaks last.
What I have to say is not gonna make this any easier, but when I look at the two candidates, if you bring Allison on, she's gonna need some coaching. And the good news is we have a fabulous coach, gonna be here for at least 3 more years. Well, I might be here for 3 more days. I mean that, she's gonna need some coaching, so as you have been with Mondays and Wednesdays, that's gonna continue for quite a while. You may not have to do that at all with Matt. You may, but it'll probably be a shorter time, so you need to, I think, consider that. Matt's gonna need to learn about the other teams that we collaborate with, but one introduction and they'll be taking care of water and sewer, fire, police, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think that's initially as big of an issue. But I wonder which one, and I had this happen just this week. So let me back up just a little bit. We've been working with I've been working, I guess, with an attorney for 3 or 4 months. Mika was very happy to say, yes, Bill, you can take that one. The Ward case, if I may use that name, been going on for quite a while. And it was realized we need to resolve this without going to court. So we worked up an agreement with our attorney, took it to the other side. Everything was cool. Well, then all of a sudden we needed to improve a drawing because it just didn't look good. And we get a new drawing that is a whole different building that's part of this settlement for this lawsuit. So I won't go into those details. But I was ticked when I got this. It's very different. And our attorney is saying this is good, sign it. So which one of these two candidates is going to stand up to the attorneys that we're paying good money to say, you're screwing us up. That's not what we want. We've talked about this how many times? And which one of the candidates is going to say, before I stick my foot in my mouth with all those things, let me ask our community development director if I'm going the right way. She said, sure, open your mouth and go at it. But anyways, who's going to stand up to our own attorneys when we're pretty sure they're taking us in a bad direction? Or are they going to just say, well, you're the attorney, so we're good? I mean, I've stood up to Dan a couple of times, and I'm doing what's best for the township, and he's fabulous. I mean, and so is Russ. They're both good guys, but they're busy. They got things going on. I say, well, this is no big deal. Who's going to stand up to those kinds of folks when you need them to do that? Which one? You're going to hire, or the township's going to hire 3 or 4 or 5, two new people in the next 10 years. Who's best at finding somebody out there that's going to be even close to as good as these folks? We have a fabulous staff, and it's going to change. Who's up to the commitment to make sure that we bring in good people when they decide to head for the beach, and not Holland Beach, probably in Florida somewhere. And then the last thing I have is a real minor one, but again, who has the backbone to stand up to the board? I mean, you have a fabulous board. In a way, I'm going to say you're a younger board, and so I have to remind you now and then about the Open Meetings Act, which is a normal thing. But which one of the two candidates has the backbone to tell Steve that he's about to step in the mud and don't do it? Those are things I think you need to also consider with the two candidates. They're both great, and I agree, it's a hard choice.
Hey, just to follow up, I think you brought up a good point. We haven't, in fact, we didn't ask that question. In order to hire a good, I'll just call it out, a good assessor or a good finance person, you need to understand the role of a good assessor and a good finance person to fully understand what you're hiring. And that's another tipping point towards Matt, because he's been in that environment of what financial management in the city environment. Now, he doesn't know township, but I would argue that that's a quick learn for him. That's an easier transition, I think, than he would admit. Correct me if I'm
Well,
wrong.
going from city to township, which I've done, is instead of knowing who to call and knowing they're gonna answer the phone and show up in 2 minutes, police, water, whatever it is, you have to collaborate so that the person knows who you are, and when you call, they say, oh, if he's calling, it's important, I better answer the phone. But that doesn't take that long to do, as long as you work at it. I mean, I had a real minor issue yesterday, and I got a hold of Eric DeBoer and took care of it. That's because I've known Eric for 25 years. But I mean, so that's the big difference between city and township. And the other one is very easy. In townships, less government is better government.
Mhm.
We don't need, if we can help it, we don't need to be controlling how many chickens per acre, as an example. How many boats can be in the backyard? Unless they're on an industrial agricultural. But anyway, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Let people live their lives. If there's real things that need to be fixed, we'll fix it. We're still gonna, as a township, deal with them, things that can't be fixed. I mean, I spent, I don't know, a fair amount of time, not too much, but to try to see if there was a chance to turn a one-way street the other way, or a small street, rather skinny street, to a one-way street. But that's never gonna happen, but took the time to just make sure and let people at least learn that not all your neighbors want it the same way you do. And you have to go along to get along.
Just some of your comments end up, again, tipping my hand towards Matt with his experience. Because dealing with issues, more and more issues, you gain experience with different municipalities, different organizations, and different residents. Yeah.
You also need to keep in mind in this building. I mean, day one, I was lucky on day one because I already knew half of the employees because I'd been here just a few years ago. But on day one, employees weren't coming into my office to say good morning. They hadn't been doing that for 5 years. That's probably why. So which candidate, when you get them here, is going to excite the board enough that they're going to be excited to come to work in the morning, say hello, be able to, not afraid to talk to the manager about anything and everything. And even let him know when they don't like his candy. I mean,
That sounds like a private joke in there.
it's the environment that you want.
Yes.
So which one's gonna give you that? That they're not, next if I go in and complain about the candy, and then he'd be in trouble. He's gonna go out and buy me a version. Yes, it is.
So, any other?
You need to keep them happy.
You need to keep the,
Because them is part of us.
yeah. We're all one team. We're all one team. Interesting. Thank you, Bill, for those comments. Any questions or clarification for Bill?
Do you have a recommendation though?
In the long run, I like Allison. I think it's gonna take a little bit more upfront to make sure that she stays within the lines that you dictate. But I don't, I guess in my personal opinion, I'd always go for the cheerleader than the steady Eddie.
Well, that wasn't very clear.
I like Allison.
All right, well, that's really difficult. So our current manager, who we thoroughly enjoy, is endorsed a candidate, and we have a kind of a split conversation or split board right now. Any suggestions of the way forward? Anybody have a thought about this decision? Take a vote. I see Shar breathing deep.
Birthday, she's.
Oh.
I'm busy.
Take a vote. Yeah. What do you think? Are we ready to take a vote? Let's start it. I hesitate suggesting that we table it because I don't think the decision gets any better a day from now or 2 days from now. So I think the decision has to be made today. Motion. We ready for a motion, guys? I see some thoughts going on now. If my respected colleague just hadn't really screwed up my mind a moment ago. Okay, Jim, you wanted to make a motion, please.
I'll make a motion. We offer Matthew Butts the position of Park Township Manager.
Support.
Okay, so the motion is on the floor and supported by Lauren. Thank you. So any discussions or comments about this particular motion that we need to clarify or get on for?
I'm waffling, going through my pros and cons, and I've got a gut feel and I've got a high hopes feel. And I don't know how to separate those two.
And that,
Brian, you're pretty good with words.
Yeah, any suggestions on this?
You know, both candidates are great candidates. I think if we had a staff that was not the kind of staff that we have, it Matt all the way. I don't. Yeah. I think our future looks a lot different than our past, and I'm concerned about a couple of different things. Right, I'm concerned about bringing past process and procedure, and then I don't want our staff to be discounted in that. And I'm not saying that Matt would. I'm just, and that's where the whole collaborative side of things, right? And how engaging would Matt be as compared to how engaging, Allison has to be engaging because she doesn't have the experience. Allison, to Bill's point, is going to take more of your time, right? She is going to need that mentoring. I wrote this down, that quote unquote, that's the safe choice is Matt. My gut still goes to Allison. I mean, if I had to make a gut decision, I have an unbelievable amount of faith right there, and a lot of faith in this board. That's what I'm having a hard time reconciling, right? As compared to Matt coming into the job, absolutely. And if that's the choice that we collectively make, I will 100% support that. But my gut tells me that the township benefits more from Allison than
The part that I go back on the Allison, the two conversations I've had with her, once with Bill at lunch and then once over the phone this week. I walked away from the conversations. I hung up the phone or walked away from the conversation for lunch. I was excited. My energy level was higher because of the interaction I had with Allison. And I find that refreshing. And to hear our staff say that they appreciate Allison and her energy and are willing to overlook the lightness of her resume experience is reassuring. That we're not taking a risk on her, but they're willing to also mentor her in the leadership role here as well.
And you have a great staff to do the mentoring.
I can't, when my colleague who I have grown in utmost respect, who knows both candidates, I mean, he knows Matt. He's known Matt for years. And he's just got to know Allison. And when he says I would throw my vote into Allison, that screws me up and makes me think that if he's willing to take the risk, and if it's hardly a risk, honestly, these are qualified candidates. It's not like, oh, they have to be taught, township governance. They know this stuff. But when my colleague, who I respect in a huge way right now, and the staff who I respect more and more year after year, recommends the candidate that I did not pick a moment ago, it causes me pause. And so, wishy-washy, I don't know. I could go with Allison right now too. I don't know. And Matt and Jim, you guys made the motion and you're confident. Again, your testimony about Matt's experience at Granville is exceptional.
And another thing you gotta remember is he is in city government. He doesn't have any experience in common law, township government.
It's true.
So he's not gonna be set in his ways, because things will be different.
Yeah.
So he's gotta learn just like Alice.
Yeah, it's true. Joan, you were leaning the other way.
Thing that I would say about Matt.
You turn your mic on. Yep, thanks.
One thing that I'd say about Matt, when we were talking about wanting someone grounded and stable, and we, at the beginning of this meeting, and Bill walked in the room, and everybody said, "Oh, let's just keep Bill," and we all voted. Everybody said aye. And I think one of the reasons why is because he's brought that stability and he's been grounded, and the relationships that he has with the people internally. I guess I see Matt fitting that a little bit more than I do Allison, not because it's male and female, but from a personality, from a grounding, from a stability standpoint. I see that. And I mean, I can lean either way. Both of them, I think, have their strong points and very few concerns. One of the discussion questions that we had with Allison, before this discussion, we were talking about, but it was brought up, and Allison said it in the meeting, is that she likes to be out and about. And I guess that's a little bit of a concern to me, as to how much does she want to be out and about versus engaged in community and other organizations and that sort of thing, versus focusing on the internal. Don't know. that was a little bit of a red flag for me. You've got to have some of that.
Mhm.
You've got to have some of that, but you also have to, I don't want all the energy going out, building a lot of additional relationships, being involved in other organizations as opposed to focusing on what do we need to do here.
One of the comments that she had made that just her ability to have collaborations with like-minded, like the road commissions of Kent, those type of organizations. And having been in the role now for over a year, I realized unfortunately that we've been isolated based on the prior situation, that our township has been not necessarily invited into conversations, but certainly not as engaged in conversations as they should be, and because of the prior situation. And so I've showed up to a lot of things that with Bill and solo, and people are excited to have us at the table again. And I just think this is a critical role to have the outside in, because we truly are a bedroom community, a consumer community that needs to have relationships with Ottawa County Sheriff, Ottawa County Roads, the road commission, the water guys, Joe Bush, the Drain Commission. All that stuff is all relational, and she's good at that.
One additional comment that I would make about Allison on a positive side is that she really strikes me as the type, we'll get it done. And if there's an obstacle, she'll figure out a way around that obstacle to get it done.
Yeah.
She's a very, when she sees the vision, she's going to make sure it happens.
Yep.
I agree, but Matt has done those things.
Mm-hmm.
All you gotta do is look at the Granville cityscape and see what he's accomplished.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just so the other board members know, I said this to Brian and Steve when we had breakfast with Matt. One of the things that struck me about him is every time he talked, he always said we. Never, it was rare for him to ever say I. That was refreshing to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, motion's on the floor. It's 1:27. We're not going to go to rock, paper, scissors. Wait, who had?
Call the question.
It's already back. I'm saving the one.
Yeah.
Just pull back.
Oh, they're back already. Save our life here, man. All right. I guess, are we ready?
Got more circles on your Venn diagram.
I don't know whether to trust my gut or Manager Bill's gut.
What?
Yours has worked in the past, go with it.
Yeah. Well, I just want to make sure that with either candidate, if we were to, the part of me is really sensitive to the staff, and you guys worked so hard to understand the process and lean in. And I want to be respectful to you. And if we were to go with Matt, I don't want to have any sense that we're disrespecting your decision. And that pains my heart, is that we would go against the team that actually leaned towards Allison. And so part of me is pained by my inclination to go up towards Matt. And that gives me a little gut check right there. We have 15 folks that spent time with both candidates, and they saw the same things. We're 7 votes, right here. And so there is an element of a lot of eyes on the prize right now, and the prize is a new manager. And so we had another 15 folks who actually evaluated the candidates. And so in true transparency, they put their vote on the line, their inclination on the line towards Allison. And we had the same experience with only 7 of us. Now they had twice as many of us, and they leaned towards the person. They are going to work with the people every day. We aren't. We'll see Matt or Allison once a month. We'll see a manager report every week. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not hiring. Yes, we are hiring the person that we're responsible for. They have to be in that office every day with that person. And they inclined, they didn't sound like they took a vote. Did you have a raise of hands or you did? You had a raise of hands. Please, how did you get to that particular leaning?
I mean, it was relatively quick, as far as our ability to spend a lot of time discussing. So I've kind of, the stuff that we managed to touch on, I brought to you. And that was the direction that it leaned. But I will say, we were just talking about this, we also walked away from the table saying we wouldn't have a problem working with either one of them.
Correct.
We could work with either one of them. So it's not a situation where we took a vote and kind of had a direction that we were leaning, but we said, but the other way is not workable. That's not the situation. And so I don't think that's a situation.
But you did raise your hands.
Sounds like a raise of hands.
And the raise of hands leaned dramatically or lightly towards Allison?
I would say more dramatically, but I've also had people say, but I lean, as an individual, the person said, I leaned only a little bit that way, but if it came down to I've got to go one or the other, that's the way it would go.
Okay.
So I don't know that it was necessarily always a strong individual lean. And it wasn't, it wasn't unanimous, but it was, yeah.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
So this is my first time going through choosing a manager, and we've got several board members with some tenure. I have a question for you. Actually, a comment. Think back to when the last manager was hired and the process you went through for that hiring and the input you received at that time from staff and from the interviews and what we ended up with as compared to today. I just ask that you think back on that.
Well, Jim and Jen are the only ones that were here.
You really
I
can't.
put you on the spot.
I don't know that the staff was involved in it. Were they? Okay.
Couple, but not as many.
But very different. In my mind, it was a different process. And so I can't compare the two.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that in my mind.
I don't know what your thought is.
The same. Yeah. It's hard to go with your heart or your gut or the resume. I agreed with everybody the last couple times where my gut said not to. So this time I'm going to vote like my gut is telling me.
I thought it was an interesting point that Manager Bill just brought up with regard to being able to stand up to our attorneys and stand up to our board, and who's going to have the backbone to do that or the knowledge to do that.
Who do you think would be better?
That's the sticking point I've got now. Who do I think would be better? Again, I go back to experience in Matt. And he when I asked him about litigation, he gave his example is what we're going through right now. And that was an eye opener for me. Like, he's lived that.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't give an example of with the Wade deal, but I think he knows enough with regard to working with the attorneys and how they interface with the judicial system. And I think a slight notch above knowing what to do.
Okay. All right. Just, ready for a vote? And I think we probably should end up doing it a roll call vote. At least this first time through. Does that make sense? So, all right.
All right. Trustee Jones.
Excuse me.
You have to vote on the motion they
Right.
made.
Oh, hold on.
So yes, and.
Okay, trustee Clark,
Yes.
trustee Gerard,
Yes.
trustee Sernay,
Yes.
and treasurer
Nay.
Stegata. And clerk Zerup, yes. And supervisor Spulhoff.
Yes.
Just a minute. So we have 2 no and 5 yes.
So any discussion on the vote? It passes. Is there any discussion about the vote as it turns out? No. Okay.
I guess you would like a motion. How do I word that? That we had agreed to unanimously follow through with what the majority has decided.
Yep.
That we support the nomination of man.
Yep. And I support that. So can we do another roll call?
Yes. Trustee Jones,
Yes.
trustee Clark,
Yes.
trustee Gerard,
Yes.
trustee Sernay,
Yes.
treasurers.
Say it
Stegata.
It's been a long day.
one more time.
Trustee Stegata. Clerk, Zerup, yes. And supervisor Spulhoff.
Yes.
Okay.
The motion passes 7-0. I just want to say thank you to the board for your willingness to do that. And thank you to the staff. Thank you. Thank you for your willingness to understand the difficulty we just went through. And as has been mentioned by your team, either candidate is excellent. And so what a delight. The next step, Bill?
Can I ask for a motion to select the alternate?
Yeah, yes, yeah. No, let me do that. Yep.
If the contract negotiations with the lead candidate aren't working out, be it for whatever reason, that you authorize the manager to go to the alternate and continue that process.
So moved.
Support.
Do we need public comment?
Yeah, we'll vote on this one. So again, the motion is to offer the job to Matthew. And then if he declines, that we would go to Allison. So that's the motion on the table today, right now. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. All right. Public comment, we'll open up to the public. Any comments from the public, the team? I think we've spoken our piece here. We're all looking at our watches right now, 1:40. All right, I'll close public comment. All right. Board comments?
Just, I really enjoyed our discussion on the Mottman Center when we were there Thursday evening for our working meeting. And, yeah, good things to come over there.
Yeah, very good. That was good. Thank you. All right, anything else? Make a motion to adjourn. All right, support. All right. All right, thank you, Bill. Team, all right.